The world of magic included several races from 4 countries and 20 nations. The age of magic and swords is long gone. Therefore, Rondel was a world of very advanced magical technology. At that time, it was called the Era of Progress. However, despite advanced technology, Rondel still remained feudal. Because kings and nobles ruled there, class inequality was still in effect, but despite this, the Era of Magical Progress was called the Golden Age of Rondel. On the 29th of December 1999, the day before the New Age, Archmage Rondella declared his testament and it turned the world upside down. He said that he had hidden his entire inheritance in different parts of the world, and whoever finds those treasures first will have to take his place. The founder of Rondel was a great wizard who had a hand in creating that world as a magical civilization. He was also the Archduke of the growing empire and the supreme sorcerer of the Ninth Circle named Manuel Lucas. In all of history, there have only been 3 such wizards of the Ninth Circle. The magician had no children and therefore no heirs, but his knowledge was very great. Therefore, whoever manages to find his treasures will be able to get everything. Thus, people began to pursue the fate of Archim Lucas. There was constant news and speculation about this. People were tirelessly trying to find out any information related to the treasures. In independence, regardless of nationality, race, or rank, people went in search of treasure by any means necessary. Each of them wanted to get to them first. But no matter how hard they tried, no one could find the fate of the Archmage. Many people investigated, but never found any clues that could lead them to the treasure. 20 years have passed since then. The events moved to the year 2007 according to the magical calendar to Lawrence Castle. Young Mr. Adrian came back to the office to put the books he had already read back in their places. This was the second son of Viscount Lawrence, Adrian Lawrence. It turned out that the main character of the story had transformed into the body of a little boy and at the same time remembered his entire past life. The end of his past life was very boring. He served in the army and had only a month left before his demobilization, but the guy died in an accident. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the Republic of North Korea, but in the Kingdom of Rheingard. He was no longer a guy named Kim Min-gi, but became Adrian Lawrence. Before that, the hero lived in a middle-class environment and then became the second son of a successful viscount and lived in an apartment. At first, Kim was very surprised and alarmed, but then he realized that his past experience could help him a lot in his new life. While his peers were engrossed in games and other children's activities, he stubbornly pursued knowledge. Adrian exceeded the expectations of those around him and his father. However, not everything was so carefree. Rondel was a civilization more technically advanced than humanity in the 21st century. Therefore, his knowledge of human science could not help the guy at all, so he decided to improve his qualifications. The hero continued to behave as if he were a true genius. But his new life was not as easy as it seemed at first glance. When Adrian was 7 years old, there was an attempt to poison him. But since the servants called a doctor in time, the boy was saved. Everyone immediately understood who could have done this to the boy. When Adrian came to, he saw before him Viscount Lawrence's first wife, Anna Lawrence. The guy didn't expect to hear any sympathy from her about what had happened. After all, she was a high-born noblewoman, and he was the son of a mere man who was a bone in her throat. Because the father loved him more than her son, Adrian could not blame Anna for what happened because there was no evidence. The boy also couldn't understand why his father didn't solve this situation because he couldn't not know anything. Adrian thought he was just turning a blind eye to it. It was then that the hero stopped showing his youthful talent. Another 10 years passed and the events moved to the 1st of May, 2019. At that time, the hero was already 20 years old and had become incredibly handsome. Seeing the guy in one of the stores, everyone whispered behind their shoulders about his life. They considered it one of those lands. Approaching the saleswoman, the hero asked where he could find chronicle cards online. The girl happily helped the hero and he took all the remaining cards. The sellers did not expect to see Lawrence's heir himself in their store, so they felt very confused. They realized that the man was into online games because he bought loot worth 5 million in-game currency. When Adrian left the store, he was informed that young Mr. Cedric had come to his house. This alarmed the hero. The boy went home and his mother, Sylvia Lawrence, was already waiting for him at the entrance to the house. At that moment, Cedric approached them and asked why his brother was walking around the city. Cedric was 23 years old and was Adrian's half-brother. Although the boys were brothers, they disliked each other and reprimanded each other every time they met. But Adrian understood that it was better not to contradict his brother, because their argument could drag on for a long time. Therefore, in such situations, the guy would simply apologize and end the fight. Cedric liked this because he thought it was simply not fitting for a half-blood to be proud. The hero decided to ask what brought his brother to his house. In response, he heard that his father wanted Cedric to take charge of a certain matter. In earthly terms, the nobles of Rondel were both oligarchs and businessmen, and they owned many businesses. The conversation was about Fars Distributions, a mining company owned by the Lawrence family. Hearing this, the hero announced that he understood everything and did not claim anything. After that, he asked his brother to leave. "Because I bought myself some online game loot and really wanted to test it out." Cedric laughed and walked away. The mother was not sure that her son had done the right thing, but Adrian thought otherwise. After all, the decision not to interfere was the right one for him. Later, the hero stopped striving for learning and distanced himself from everyone, including his own servants. The boy believed that his father didn't need a son who was just a human who wasn't a genius, so he grew cold towards him, and thanks to this, Adrian never again found himself in a life-threatening situation. For 10 whole years, the boy lived like an invisible shadow. After graduating from the academy, the hero left the apartment with his mother, and everyone believed that the guy became like this because of poisoning. Even the servants believed that the boy had driven himself out of the family. Most of them in the new house were subordinates of the older woman, Anna, so Adrian should have thought carefully before saying anything. The hero played online games as if trying to escape reality. In the game, he felt omnipotent and independent. The guy realized that it was in an online game that no one would be watching him. 10 years ago, Adrian entered the Royal Academy. When he was writing an essay on the topic of Manuel Lucas, he found something completely unexpected. This made the boy very alarmed, so he decided to look into this in detail. However, it soon became obvious to him that the Duke was an Earthling, and his last words described how he would really like to walk on a California beach with Mary again. Adrian didn't quite understand what place the wizard was talking about, but he decided not to omit this moment from his biography. Adrian decided to continue his investigation and found more and more evidence that the magician was indeed from the human world. The fact that the hero Sam was from the world of humans came in handy in his task of finding the fate that Manuel left to his descendants. Once Adrian discovered the fate of the Archmage, the real suffering began. And at the beginning, the hero wasn't sure he should get involved because Manuel Lucas's fate was hidden in an unexpected place. It was hidden in an online game in a virtual world. Externally, that world was no different from reality, but since it was a game, there was no feeling of pain. But Adrian felt pain, and every fight cost him dearly. No one knew that upon receiving the fate of the Archmage, a person would physically move into the game reality and compete with various monsters. The hero understood that no one could believe that it was true, and therefore he never told anyone about it. By defeating monsters, Adrian was able to reach level 10 and had the opportunity to change his occupation. At that moment, the system suggested that he climb to the second floor of Manuel Lucas's magic tower. Without even thinking, the guy agreed. Having risen to the second floor, the hero moved to the sorcerer's office. On the first floor, there was nothing interesting, but on the second floor, there were thousands of books on shelves and a chest that immediately caught the boy's attention. After opening the chest, the system informed the boy that he had received a reward, but unfortunately it was impossible to convert it into real money. In return, Adrian got the job of a magician. Before, the boy had seen health points and mana points, but didn't perceive them as anything unusual, but the feeling of magical energy in real life was truly something incredible. Adrian felt the mana swirling in his chest. After such incredible sensations, the boy decided to learn the spell that suited him, so he went to the bookshelves. Seeing the large selection of books on the shelves, Adrian was fascinated, because this is exactly what the library of the greatest magician of mankind should be like. Suddenly, Adrian felt an incredible headache. This was related to reading a book in the game, as it was difficult to immerse yourself in its content. When the boy saw the book about opening the circle, he was very happy. After all, this book was exactly what he needed. Adrian never expected to reach Manuel Lucas's level so quickly, but he understood that he had only taken a small step towards figuring everything out. And the hero just wanted to live with his mother, in comfort, prosperity, and security. Therefore, for this, he was ready for anything. The next day, the hero went to the training area of the residence. Adrian decided to practice with the sword. A trusted figure and personal guard knight named Weiss was delighted with Adrian's efforts. But the guy felt like he was out of shape lately, so he decided to work out. At that moment, Adrian felt the circle of magic develop and his stamina grow. In order for the knights not to recognize the presence of mana in him, the boy learned a spell. Looking at the happy Adrian, Weiss realized that something very good had happened in his life. The hero told about how he was able to get a good reward in the game. Everyone around them thought Adrian and Weiss were strange and laughed at them. Weiss noticed this, but Adrian insisted that he ignore it. The hero was pleased that the knight was so worried about him, but he did not know that the boy was only pretending to be innocent. This is exactly how he had to look in order to survive, and so that Cedric and his mother Anna would not see him as a threat. In order to access even more abilities, the boy needed to use everything he had. so the boy immediately got down to it. The system reported a satellite call. Therefore, the hero decided to take advantage of this condition. Although the companion would take away the experience that the boy could have gained, he still didn't consider it a waste of money. Therefore, Adrian decided to choose the best companion to protect him. After looking through several candidates, the boy still couldn't find the one he needed. But suddenly, the system offered him a companion named Arcia Skysteel. The guy saw such a companion for the first time and didn't even know they existed. After all, at its level among unique satellites, it was top-notch. The hero really liked this offer and immediately took advantage of it. Since the companion was taken once and for all and could not be changed, the system asked again whether the hero wanted to take this particular character. Adrian did not know that it would be impossible to change the companion. The boy even believed that, being a wizard, he did not need any other companion. So he confirmed his order. In front of him, he saw an incredibly bright light and someone's shadow. At this moment, his companion named Arcia Heavenly Steel appeared. Adrian saw that the girl was very beautiful, but he thought it didn't matter. So I suggested she go practice. The hero liked the way Arcia behaved in battle. After the battle, the system informed the guy that he should exit the game and rest, as he had been there for more than 15 hours. So I decided to leave it. That day turned out to be very productive for the guy, so he decided to rest a little and go to the square. At this moment, the hero saw someone's silhouette. This was his companion, whom he had not expected to see in his room at all. The hero couldn't understand how she managed to get out of the game with him. Arisha understood that the boy was interested in how she could materialize in his world. At that moment, Adrian realized that the girl understood a lot, because she could distinguish between the game and reality. She then revealed that she was an android system created by Archduke Manuel Lucas. Hearing this information, the guy felt sad, because if he had known that this would happen, he would have found another companion. But since Aricia's stats could be maxed out, she was comparable in strength to a grandmaster. This meant that the girl could safely compete with the strongest creatures in the world. Adrian couldn't believe that Manuel Lucas had created a monster of this caliber. His only problem was that he didn't know where to hide the girl in the real world. Previously, she was in sleep mode in a repair shop in the sacred city of Everhill, and then she was moved to reality. Reverse movements are only possible at the time in which she was sent to the real world. Since the heroine belonged to the warrior class, she did not have stealth, but Mana's stealth was possible. Then the hero noticed that the protective field around the girl had disappeared along with the mana, and this made him very happy. After all, Adrian believed that his reputation had already been razed to the ground, so it couldn't get any worse. After some time, the servants constantly whispered that a girl was coming to Adrian's room. People discussed the fact that the hero constantly walked with her. Even the mother kept wondering when her son would finally get married. Then, when the boy was thinking about how to resolve the situation with the girl, the system announced that he had reached level 30, and he decided to pretend to be an immature and foolish young nobleman who brought a strange woman into the house. Therefore, no one should have guessed who Arisia really was. When the girl was in the real world, her body in the game switched to eco mode, and from the outside it looked as if she was sleeping. But for the hero's safety, notifications were included in it, and if something bad happens in reality, it will react immediately. At this point, the second-level Destiny quest began, and their team had to defeat the Orc warrior Khans. If the warrior managed to kill people, he could increase his level. Seeing a notification from the system stating that the use of one-time attacks and bombs was prohibited in that battle, Adrian realized that it would be very difficult for him to defeat the Orc. Due to the fact that the boy was wearing all sorts of artifacts that enhanced magic, the spells became much stronger than they were in the first round. Therefore, Adrian and Arisha easily inflicted painful blows on their opponent. Although the opponent was badly wounded, he did not give up. The hero even thought that he himself would not have been able to cope, but he understood that at that level he shouldn't have let fear defeat him, so he continued to fight with dignity. Thanks to the joint efforts of Adrian and Arisha, they defeated the Orc. Then the system reported that the third floor of Manuel Lucas's magic tower was open. At the same time, the events moved to Viscount Lawrence's office. A Viscount named Rayford Lawrence was Adrian's father. His wife Anna approached him and asked if the man was worried that his son had brought a simple human into the apartment. At that moment, the husband handed his wife an envelope informing her of the start of the draft campaign. Since war with the Kreutzen Empire was inevitable, the nobles were ordered to report to the military registration and enlistment office. Anna was most worried about her son, so she wondered if Lawrence was planning to send him to war. She suggested sending Adrian away because he was incapable of anything except playing games all day anyway. The husband did not like this proposal from his wife, but the woman believed that until then the hero had enjoyed a carefree life, so he had to go to war. After considering Anna's words, Rayford explained that Cedric was his heir, and the man himself would be able to provide his wife and father-in-law with everything they needed. Therefore, he asked his wife to accept his decision with humility. He decided to send Adrian away, but upon his return, the boy would gain complete independence. Another condition was that Adrian and his mother should no longer be threatened. Rayford considered such conditions fair. Everyone should have given Adrian freedom. Meanwhile, Adrian was training with Arisha and the Knight. Vine was shocked at how strong the hero had become. The thing was that Adrian received the reward for the quest, the Second Circle of Magic, as well as hidden storage. It was an invisible space in which the boy could store things. The boy was sure that if he could fully master Lucas's legacy, he would be able to become even greater than the wizard. At this moment, the boy's father interrupted the conversation and called him to him. A few days later, a fight broke out between the Lawrence family at their apartment. Cedric opposed Adrian's going to war because he believed that the boy was not a weakling, but the father explained that Cedric was the only heir, and the man could not risk him like that. Adrian's mother did not understand why her son had to be put at risk. The father believed that the heir was more valuable than the other children. Adrian was very angry with his father and felt very sad. But he understood that this way he would be able to take the points with him and no one would stop him from playing. And he was also happy that when he left, he would be able to go out under Anna's supervision. Therefore, Adrian decided to agree to go to war and be a representative of their family. Cedric didn't like this, and he warned the boy that if he didn't manage it, he wouldn't leave it like that. Adrian promised to do everything in his power. When the boy turned to leave the office, his father asked him to stay. Going out onto the balcony, the father announced that if the boy returned safely, he would move him and his mother to the royal lands. This will be his reward for going instead of Cedric, and he will also have complete freedom. But the hero decided not to immediately agree to his father's proposal, so he promised to think about it. He explained this by saying that he first had to come back from the front alive. At this moment, the father handed the boy the 5th and 7th grade defensive field rings. Since teleportation was impossible on the battlefield, this was all his father could do for Adrian. Seeing such valuable things, the boy hugged them tightly to his chest and thanked his father. Turning his head, he saw Cedric and Anna following them. Rayford also warned the boy that he would take care of his mother. Although the relationship with his father was very difficult, he was the only one the boy could trust. For a long time after talking to his son, Rayford couldn't accept the thought that Adrian had gone to war. The man knew that ever since the boy was poisoned, Adrian had been behaving this way on purpose. The boy's mother could not believe that her only son was going to the front. She was very worried that Anna would be able to send killers to the front to the boy. Then the hero said that he would no longer tolerate their bullying. He decided to put an end to it and asked his mother to wait a bit. 2 days later, Lawrence's troops were mustered. Adrian decided to take Arisha with him to war, although the servants were against it. Inside the train, there is a conference room. The hero could not leave the girl at home because she is ready to protect him to the last drop of blood. In the boy's stash was a universal panacea of 3 elixirs. They lay there and waited for their time. After the meeting, the hero decided to go to his room and warned that if there was anything important, he should be written to on Messenger. And in the meantime, he will play online games. The officer of the advanced detachment expressed his opinion on this matter. The advanced squad was a special squad equipped with magical armor and a magical sword. They were the main driving force of any army and were used to judge how stylish a country was. Forward Detachment Officer Dalton believed that online games were completely inappropriate. Since the guy's reputation wasn't that great because he brought a girl with him and he was also going to play games. But the deputy captain of the advanced detachment, William, apologized to Adrian for his subordinate. He believed that the hero did not need to pay attention to the opinions of His Majesty the Viscount's subordinates. At that moment, the guy realized that the men were completely insincere with him. But he didn't care because he was used to this attitude, so he went to his room. After starting the game, Adrian and Arisha approached the 4th level quest. They had to clear the 4th level before they reached the Western Command. In order to move on to the next level, you had to kill Emmers. Such monsters were very serious opponents, but this one seemed very slow and stupid to the hero. Suddenly, monster struck and wounded Adrian. He really liked the sound of the hero's broken bones and torn flesh. The boy did not expect the monster to attack so suddenly. Looking at him, Adrian saw Cedric. Adrian and Arisha pounced on the monster, deciding to stab it with their blessed weapon. The hero tried to quickly deal with the monster, which reminded him of his brother. After the battle, the system reported the completion of the 4th level. Adrian knew that during the attack, the adrenaline rush made no pain at all. But after the battle was over, his body felt numb. Therefore, Arisha gave the boy the elixir that was in the vault. Then the hero realized that the girl was truly special. He thanked her for helping him. Adrian and Arisha moved to the fifth floor of Manuel Lucas's magical tower. The guy immediately decided to look at his awards. The system reported that the hero managed to obtain all-round vision glasses. They allowed for the analysis and examination of objects with the ability to see everything and enhance vision. Then Adrian realized that those glasses would help him recognize enemies and friends. Events moved to the Western Command. When everyone saw that Adrian had arrived instead of Cedric, they were shocked. Coming closer and hearing the men's conversation, Adrian identified himself as the same son who had been poisoned and considered a fool. The hero met Viscount Evans, Chief of Staff of the Western Group of Forces, and Deputy Chief of Staff Miller. Adrian reported that he had brought 5 officers of the vanguard, 50 knights, and 1,000 infantry, although the guy believed that the infantry was not necessarily taken into account, because the officers of the labor detachment would decide the end of the war. Only a magician of at least the 7th circle could handle an officer of the advanced detachment. The hero realized that it was Duke Lucas who introduced the officers of the advanced detachment to military practice. When the boy was informed that the brigade commander would be Earl Otis, he was delighted, because the man was a great lord of the North. Approaching his men, Adrian announced that they had become a second separate brigade. A week has passed since Adrian and his crew arrived. Commander Otis did not visit his brigade at all, explaining this by the fact that he had many other things to do. His actions were incomprehensible, but the hero was free to play while the commander was away. Suddenly, Arisha informed the boy that someone had entered his room. Exiting the game, the hero saw a man in front of him. Arisha tried to stop him. Adrian doesn't understand why Sir Dalton has come to see him. The man explained that he was worried about Adrian's condition, as he had been in the game for a very long time. Since the hero warned about being written to in Messenger, he did not like this approach. After all, the man entered the brigade commander's room without permission. Adrian missed that he wanted to kill him, but Dalton denied everything. When he asked the girl what had really happened, he heard that Dalton had tried to separate them. The man denied this and said that Arisha had set him up. Adrian understood that Dalton was breaking discipline. So, taking out a knife, I decided to scare him. Adrian was very quiet, not because he was good, but because he wanted to survive. But he didn't want to give in to anyone anymore. And this was a great opportunity to prove to everyone that he was not a weakling. One of the knights immediately called for help from the knight's deputy captain, William. He told him that the brigadier was going to execute Dalton, so he asked him to hurry. When William entered the room, he saw a knife covered in blood. At that time, Dalton was lying on the ground. William asked Adrian to explain what was happening there. The hero said that the knight who pursued the girl was not a knight to him. This made the deputy very angry. So, bowing his head, he began to apologize to the boy and Arisha. The man reported that Dalton had been removed from his position and ordered him sent to prison. And those knights who let him into the room should also be sent with him. Since the hero didn't like the smell of blood, he decided to go to another room and ask to be cleaned there. Looking at the hero, William realized that the boy was not considered who he really was. Adrian and Arisha moved back into the game. There they continued their regular battles. It was necessary to kill the 5th level Dark Knight Zenith, but their team easily managed to do it and the 6th floor opened up before them. For winning the battle, the guy received 2 trillion loot. Receiving money for fights has always been very pleasant for the guy. The system also reported receiving the Istro Magic Staff, a shield, a mantle, and a short sword. The boy decided to keep the staff and mantle for himself and give everything else to Arisha. Suddenly, something entered the boy's room. One of the knights reported feeling the presence of a strong energy. Adrian calmed him down and said he was just rummaging through his artifacts. The boy realized that this happened because of the sword he had received. After all, it was Lucas's magic sword and was given out as a reward for the quest of unexpected encounters. The magical equipment of an advanced detachment officer was designed to increase his power. Unlike mana, aura could not be created artificially. It was at that moment that the boy understood why everyone wanted to be the first to find the fate of Archmage Lucas. 2 weeks have passed since Adrian was appointed as the representative of the House of Lawrence and was preparing an army for battle against the Kreutzen Empire. The feeling that a military conflict was about to begin had faded, so the army was idle. After the incident with Dalton, everyone was afraid of the hero, and William surprisingly began to respect the boy. But none of this mattered to him, because the most important thing was that no one bothered him while he was playing. Suddenly, the system reported that Arisha was experiencing happy emotions. Adrian assumed it was because they had gone for a walk. He was surprised by this and realized that he knew absolutely nothing about her. But there were things she liked and things she didn't like. Upon entering the clearing, the system reported that the girl felt very happy, so he decided that they needed to go for walks more often. Returning back, one of the knights offered the boy a drink. It was a guy named Lopez. Adrian immediately realized that the boys had instigated him to do this. Therefore, he did not agree to the knight's proposal, and also asked why he wore the title of knight. After reviewing the knight's characteristics, the hero realized that the boy had two high talents. He had a rare special trait and a great talent for magic. The hero could not understand why the boy allowed himself to be bullied, and he believed that he could achieve a lot by becoming a magician. Adrian warned the other knights, however, not to dare to engage in such foolishness again. Since he didn't want any problems, he didn't defend Lopez, but he believed that his talent could be of great benefit to him. If he were given the equipment of an advanced detachment officer, the boy could become a battle mage. Adrian believed that Lopez had every chance of doing so. The hero considered taking the boy under his wing, but the obstacle to this was Count Otis, because the boy was a knight from another county. Therefore, permission from the commander was required for this. It was at that moment that Adrian decided he needed to assemble his team, and it had to be done while he was away from his stepmother's influence. Lopez also thought long and hard about Adrian's words. Suddenly, he was informed that Commander Otis had summoned him. Entering the office, the boy saw Adrian. Lopez did not understand why the nobleman had called him. Otis informed the boy that from that moment on, Adrian would be his lord. Adrian remembered an incident from a past life when China lost to North Korea in football, and a fan asked a question. He didn't understand why there weren't 11 good football players in China among the large population. Therefore, the guy believed that no matter how many talents a person had, if he did not have a social ladder, then his talent would pass. In his opinion, many young people were wasted, unable to develop their abilities. Since those people all followed the wrong path, they achieved nothing in life. A girl named Linda also wanted to find her talent. Adrian believed she should have been tested on another device, so he gathered a few people for his team. Adrian and the girl moved to a high-fashion atelier in the royal palace. The guy decided to change his entire team's clothes there. The first was Eric Jones, and he had a special trait of conviction. Adrian decided to send them from the camp to train and had a special approach to each of the team. After changing clothes, everyone went to the wrestler. They were shocked by its size and the fact that they would be living there. Adrian also announced that he had appointed servants and a butler for them. The hero warned that he would pay cash assistance and compensation for dismissal in the amount of 240 million. The team was ready to do anything to exceed the hero's expectations. Adrian, in turn, added that if they didn't let him down, the salary would be much higher. He also expressed his hopes that they would live in harmony and not disappoint him with quarrels. Adrian warned that if anyone wanted to lure the team to him, he would pay them twice as much. He had to ensure that the talents of his team developed as quickly as possible. Although he made a lot of money, it was actually considered an investment in the future. It was an investment in quality staff. The boy was also worried that he had to hide his mother from Anna, so he decided to find a special place. A few days ago, in the middle of the night, Cedric called the hero and told him to hang out with other people just like him. Adrian didn't understand how he knew about the simple, so he assumed someone was following him. One day, they managed to catch an unknown person who was constantly following him. It was this man who was Cedric's spy. A boy named Berto decided to tell everything because otherwise he could be killed. As it turned out, he found the hero because Cedric had another person in the teleportation room following him. Adrian believed that Berto was ready to go against his master, so he wanted to lure him to his side. The hero left him no choice but to work for him, otherwise he would die. The nobleman wanted the boy to send him reports every day, which Adrian was very busy with. Meanwhile, events have moved to Viscount Lorenz's residence. When Cedric realized that his man had been caught, he felt embarrassed. After all, he knew that his father could find out that spies had been sent after Adrian, but he still told another spy to continue the investigation. After listening to the owner, Berto agreed with his words, without saying that he would no longer work for him. The other spies who were sent to Hadrian had long since been neutralized. Since the talent acquisition was successful, he now had 20 very talented recruiters under his command. Everyone worked very cohesively, and this helped the hero rise to the next level. After passing another level, the hero had to become a sixth circle magician. But suddenly the system reported an emergency and an urgent meeting was announced. It was reported that the sky fortress of the Kreutzen Empire had crossed the border. At that moment, the boy realized that it was just a storm. Everyone moved to the meeting room and discussed further actions. Otis suggested sending the fighters on trains in order to advance at any moment. There were no teleportation coordinates along the entire front between them and the Kreutzens, so moving around on your own was forbidden. All types of communication were also banned for soldiers except lieutenant colonels and above, and soldiers communicated only using walkie-talkies. Since the war has begun, everyone must be on high alert. Adrian also felt the need to be alert. Meanwhile, in the game, the guy got another additional companion, the Black Sonic Eagle. Stepping outside, Adrian saw his new companion flying through the sky. At that moment, the eagle flew to the hero and bowed his head before him. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. They were waiting for an explanation from the guy about such a monster. Adrian turned to Oral and invited him to come with him. The knights did not understand why the bird did not attack the boy, but rather flattered him. The war began immediately in full swing with full-scale fighting along the entire western border. The hero's team was fully engaged, but there was no communication with them, as the guy could not enter the game. When informed that the opponents had begun to attack, Adrian regrouped and attacked as well. Although the boy was just fighting monsters in the game, he learned not to fear for his life. Suddenly, he shouted, however, to immediately deploy energy shields over the train. Thanks to this, they managed to escape. Then Adrian realized that only a magician of the seventh circle could inflict such a blow even from a distance. Since the energy shield was broken, they only had 90 seconds to recharge. Everyone understood that thanks to Adrian, they remained alive. Although there were two sky fortresses in the Kreutzen Empire, they were much smaller than theirs. Since there were no attacks on the ground, the hero was sure that something terrible was brewing in the sky. Suddenly, the system reported that all bridges had been destroyed, and also that certain parts of the fortress will be destroyed. So the guy ordered to retreat and try to shoot down the missile. To prevent the missile from hitting them, Adrian decided to use a large shield using his father's ring. If their sky fortress were destroyed, everyone could die. Otis expressed his gratitude to Adrian for his skill. The commander also informed the general staff that the victory over the opponent was thanks to the hero. Therefore, the guy could count on a good reward. Also, Otis told the boy that there was gossip about him that he had tamed an unusual giant eagle. The knights were captured by Adrian. After all, the giant black eagle was a species of eagle of the Altadir in the sacred city of Everhill. These birds were born with high levels of mana and could fly up to 5,000 kilometers. Their conversation continued for a long time, but Adrian asked the commander to allow him to use the communication. After all, he really wanted to go play the game. It was the second week of the war. Lorenz's brigade showed very good results. The fighting was very heavy and they were lucky to survive at all. There were many more enemies than them, and you had to be as focused as possible in order to survive and wait for reinforcements. 10 officers from the advanced detachment under the command of Count Otis arrived as reinforcements. Adrian wanted to attack the enemy. It was not easy for him to get reinforcements, so his team had to hold out until the last. With each passing day, Lawrence's brigade contributed its strength to the war. Even Commander Otis was shocked by her power and Adrian's strength. Everyone considered the boy a hibernating dragon who had finally awakened. Therefore, Otis wanted to lure the boy to him. And I also really wanted to take him as my son-in-law. But the obstacle to this was Arisha. William's attitude towards the hero has also changed a lot. One day he approached Adrian and asked why he was hiding his true power. He also believed that Cedric was not suitable for the role of Lord and wanted to help the hero stand against him. Adrian realized that the man was sincere with him. William was one of the boy's father's closest advisors, so Adrian thought he was involved in this as well. He thanked her for the kind words, but decided to pretend that the conversation never happened. William felt disappointed. No matter how hard Adrian tried to stop Cedric's spying, he couldn't be sure that there wasn't a type of bed that he didn't already know about. Therefore, he decided not to accept his husband's help. After all, getting rid of Anna and Cedric was his only task. For his services to the fatherland, the youngest son of the Lawrence family was awarded the Order of the Golden Lion, 2nd degree. The guy didn't even expect such praise for his actions. The hero missed that he was needed by the king to maintain the fighting spirit in the country. Adrian also thought that if Cedric found out about this, he would bite his elbows. And indeed, when Cedric found out about this, he was very angry. And he believed that if he had gone to war, all the rewards would have been his. Cedric's father was with Sylvia, Adrian's mother at the time, and this worried Anna very much. She believed that her husband would not return to them while Adrian was at the front. Anna reassured her son by saying that Cedric and Adrian would never be equal to Cedric. They were supported by their maternal grandfather. Anna took control of much of the power in the vicarage. Cedric believed that his father would soon transfer all power to him, and with the help of his power, he will be able to deal with Adrian forever. Meanwhile, the hero ordered everyone to drink energy drinks before the fight. Adrian mixed in precious elixirs and the boys were full of energy. Men didn't know that one drop of energy had a legendary panacea. Sometimes even the guy felt sorry for using it, but he wanted to end the war as soon as possible. William and his knights decided to go on a reconnaissance mission. At that time, Adrian was summoned by the commander. Before that, the hero decided to go feed the eagle. And then he went to the commander. The boy could not understand why Count Otis summoned him so often, but he had no right to refuse. At his destination, he saw that there were other commanders as well. Adrian didn't understand what was happening and why such an urgent meeting was needed. Coming out to the guests, Otis announced that soon their ears would stop hearing explosions and gunshots. After all, the war was supposed to end soon. At that moment, a meeting of diplomats from their and the enemy side was taking place, so they were supposed to announce the end soon. The commanders discussed what they had heard. Everyone considered the enemy side to be abnormal dogs and did not understand at all why they had started this. Adrian wondered if he should send the advance party back since they had gone on a reconnaissance mission, but Otis said that the war games should continue until a peace treaty is signed. The guy noticed that the younger ones in rank went to die and the older ones decided everything for them. Otis suggested that the guy relax as he had recently been awarded. Adrian himself did not understand how long ago he had become a hero to everyone, rather than a worthless person. He didn't want to think about others because in the future he would need to return to his family, and by then he wanted to improve his level. Returning back, the hero told William about the end of the war. The man was happy because his rivals could go further and fight them to the death. 1,000 officers of the advanced units would have reduced their cities to powder. This would be a disaster of horrendous proportions. Adrian suggested that the man rest, and then he offered him a cookie. The cookies were a gift from Count Otis and were very exquisite. William expressed his thoughts on the fact that the hero was very different from other nobles, and he had noticed this for a long time. After all, he not only worried about ordinary soldiers, but also personally stood on duty while his men rested. And yet he carried himself with dignity, like a true nobleman. The man remembered that when the enemy was coming at them, Adrian was drinking black tea, and even then he realized that the guy was very confident in himself. Subordinates looking at him had the opportunity to relieve tension and fear. Everyone in the 2nd Separate Brigade trusted the hero. William tried to bring up the subject of Cedric again. He even put trusted people on guard and checked that there were no listening devices in the room. Adrian realized that the man was serious and also remained on his father's side. But the guy was afraid that the measures the man had taken would be noticeable. But that's why William came there when everyone was resting. After that, placing his hand on his heart, the man swore allegiance to Adrian Lawrence, the 2nd son of Viscount Lawrence. His other trusted knights told the boy the same thing. Then Adrian decided to agree, but on one condition. Everyone had to act as if nothing had happened until he gave permission. Since the hero had a plan, he asked to listen to his order. 5 officers and about 30 knights were ready to swear allegiance to him. Adrian liked that number. William also reported that Adrian's father planned to send Sir Perseus to him. Perseus was the deputy commander of the Viscount's knightly regiment, but he left the order long ago, falling victim to the power struggle that Anna sowed. William assumed that the commander's return would attract many knights who supported neutrality to the boy's side. Sir Perseus was a typical warrior and was highly respected among the knights, so now Adrian would truly be on equal terms with his companion and Anna. The guy thought it was a very good idea to lure the commander to him. Therefore, he decided to find a use for his talents outside the family. Adrian eagerly wanted to meet his husband, but no one would know about it. William himself had to organize this meeting. After that, the guy went into the game to complete the next quest of unexpected encounters. That day, he wanted to achieve the creation of the 7th circle of magic. The quest of unexpected encounters up to level 200, the guy never dies. In the game, it was normal to die and overcome difficulties. But the guy's body synchronized with the character and experienced death very painfully. Arisha had always stood like a wall between the boy and the enemy, but in that battle, the monster pushed her away. In any fight, Adrian's first concern was his safety, but in this battle, even his companions could not quickly kill his opponent. After all, it was the Death Knight Pascal. He wasn't just an aura master, he also had an individual buff specifically for this quest, so his physical strength was simply incredible. The monster was of such a high level that the boy couldn't even think. The system reported that the hero had been killed and suggested trying again. In reality, the boy couldn't even submit to the pain because there were so many people around. Then he realized that up until that moment, everything had been very easy. The system reported that his companion had also returned to life. Aricia apologized to the boy for not being able to protect him. It also hurt her to die, but in the game, the girl's feelings were not as strong as the hero's. The further things went, the more uneasy Adrian became about hiding behind her fragile figure during the fight. Therefore, in the future, he decided to change his style of pain so that she would not have to take all the blows and bear his pain. The battle with the Death Knight showed the imperfection of how they fought. Aricia blocked the enemy's movements, and the eagle supported her by distracting the enemy, while the hero, in turn, dealt strong blows with magic behind her. Before, their equipment helped to equalize their forces, but since they encountered a strong opponent, even such equipment did not help them. Adrian understood that a lot of his time was spent charging spells and dealing damage. Therefore, he decided that in order to keep the enemy away from him, he needed an eagle to attack him from above. Adrian suggested 3 solutions to their problem, and they set out to test them. During the second battle against the Death Knight, Adrian was killed again. The guy couldn't understand why his options didn't work. The eagle was not adapted to a direct grip, so it died after a minute. Adrian died 3 minutes later, and Arisha a minute later. The hero believed that all the trouble came from the eagle's quick death. The Black Eagle didn't deal much damage, but its strength was distracting the enemy. The hero believed that the eagle needed to be protected for their fighting style to work, but he did not give up and went into battle again. During the third battle, Adrian was killed again and felt very angry about it. He didn't understand what he was doing wrong, but this time the hero didn't give up and wanted to try again. In the fifth battle, using various types of weapons, the hero was killed again. During the ninth battle, the biggest problem was dodging the opponent's blows, and that's why the guy lasted for 25 minutes. But he was also killed in that battle. Adrian thought the game would end when he reached level 200, but there was a delay with the connection. In reality, it seemed to the boy that everything was happening in slow motion, because in the game he died and was resurrected many times. At that time, Arisha became much stronger. Only experience gave such strength. The girl didn't speak like an artificially created homunculus at all. As she gained experience and new impressions, she should soon be no different from a human. During the 18th battle, they dealt damage to the Death Knight, and they managed to kill him. Adrian felt incredibly happy about this. Thus, the 7th level of the Unexpected Encounters quest was completed. Thus, Adrian was able to move to the 8th floor of Manuel Lucas's magic tower. This floor seemed to him to be the size of a royal library. The guy couldn't believe that all that splendor was actually graphics. At that moment, a fairy appeared before them. He looked a lot like Archduke Lucas. Faye introduced himself as Chester. He was the guide of destiny and part of Manuel Lucas's soul. At that moment, Adrian could not believe his ears. Chester was an artificial intelligence created from Lucas's memory. He reassured the boy and told him not to worry. Adrian couldn't believe that he was an artificial intelligence because he spoke so freely and without cliches. Although Manuel Lucas was unable to resist the natural process of aging and death, a part of him still remained in the virtual world. This is exactly what the Hollywood system was created for. But it was imperfect, and memories were damaged during recording and could also disappear. The boy wondered why the fairy had appeared before him. At this point, the system reported that the hero had been allowed to use administrative rights in Hollywood 5 times. The conditions were imposed because he had not yet fully entered into the rights to his destiny. But in the future, if he wanted to, he would use those rules as he pleased. The guy could apply them to any programs that worked on the basis of the Hollywood virtual system. The Hollywood system had features of virtual reality and was similar to the human internet system, but there were 4 rules prohibiting the use of administrator rights. Even money laundering had to be done intelligently and made to look like it was a real fund. Adrian decided to use his administrator rights because there was a large amount of money in Iago's accounts, and he also asked Arisha to come up with a legend about her birthplace. Faye agreed to make the girl's birth documents, which should indicate that she is a complete orphan. Chester's duties were to help the guy with everything and give him administrator rights. The hero was curious about why Duke Lucas went so far for the sake of his heir. The wizard simply decided to cover up his longing for his hometown and make sure that Adrian did not live such a difficult life as he did. But the hero believed that if the wizard had not ended up in that world, and had not been an earthling like him, and had not left his legacy for future generations, he would not have been so smart. Bowing his head, Adrian thanked Chester for everything. The events moved to the Archduchy, to the city of Nishan. William came to the former vice-captain of the Knights, Sir Perseus. The man told him that Adrian would soon take power into his own hands, and after that their land would prosper. William considered the boy very gifted and supported him. Perseus had heard that the hero was very useful in war. William said that he saw everything with his own eyes and followed his orders, so he considered the guy one of the great geniuses of our time. The man believed that the deputy was obliged to get to know the hero. They understood that Adrian had deliberately behaved this way in order to survive and had only now shown himself. And the hero also possessed patience and wisdom. William wanted to convince the vassals, who had taken a position of neutrality, to side with the younger son of the Viscount. The deputy liked this proposal and found it very interesting, so I decided to meet with Adrian myself, Perseus, to see if the hero was truly as dignified as he was described. William tried to call the guy to arrange a meeting, but no one picked up. Suddenly, at this moment, the men felt an incredible mana. Adrian himself teleported to them. Although the men were the 2 strongest warriors in their land, they could not sense the boy's approach. Adrian has been dreaming of revenge for 13 years since he was poisoned, so he had no right to come unprepared. The guy needed an aura master as a bodyguard. At that moment, William realized that he had completely underestimated the young master. This young guy was not so simple. As it turned out, Adrian arrived in time and was able to kill Anna's messengers who were following the deputy. The hero knew that Perseus had a lot of questions for him. With the help of his strength and abilities, the boy healed the messengers. William and Perseus were surprised by what they saw. Therefore, the hero suggested that they move to another place. Using the seventh circle spell, they teleported. The events have moved to the kingdom of Luas. It was the fifth state in terms of the number of great magicians. The most powerful of them was Duke Kane Riverdale. He was a great magician and teacher, among whose graduates were 6 magicians of the seventh circle of the sixth. Everyone knew that the greatest magician of all time was Manuel Lucas, but the greatest teacher of magicians was the Duke of Riverdale. Perseus assumed that the boy had studied under him, but the man died a year ago, so the hero could not study with him. Then Adrian told me that he studied in the virtual world, because it was the only place where he could hide from Anna's eyes. The Duke taught the boy alternately in the real and virtual worlds. In reality, it was all just a fabrication. Since Adrian became a great magician so quickly, no one would have believed that a 20-year-old boy could reach the seventh circle. The day before, he had prepared well before lying and had a photo of the hologram and the new record board. These were items he had ordered from Chester just in case. In addition to the photo, Chester forged many different pieces of evidence that indicated that Riverdale had a secret student. Therefore, his family and the Order will trust the hero when they learn about him. Adrian could not tell that he was the heir of Duke Lucas, because for those words, no one would have left him alone for the rest of his life. In order to deal with Cedric and Anna, Adrian decided to call on Perseus for help. At one point, the guy asked for the man's left hand. When their hands connected, the system reported a virtual account. After transferring the money to his account, Adrian ordered the man to gather loyal people for him who would carry out his orders and collect evidence. It is the people who will do the dirty work to achieve his goal. Since they were going to confront Mark Count Revan, they really needed workers. Perseus didn't want to take money from the guy because he thought he had worked very hard to earn it. But Adrian didn't want to tell anyone that he had extremely large sums in his account. The hero wanted to become the heir to the throne and gain power that the whole world would have to reckon with. Perseus bowed his head before the boy and said that he would be with him until the end. Meanwhile, Anna was worried about where her 5 expert-level spies had gone without a trace. After all, they said that they could defeat anyone except the Aura Master and the Great Magician. The woman was also interested in where Billiam and Perseus were, but her assistant couldn't answer that question. Anna suspected that the men might be plotting something against her and decided to keep a close eye on them. Since the man had asked them to stop following Adrian and Sylvia, the woman had no choice and did not want to provoke the Windows and Lorenz because it would lead to problems. But Adrian exceeded all her expectations in the war, and his merits became the merits of his superiors and brothers. Therefore, she intended to remove Adrian from her path. The woman suggested that she just needed to kill the guy. She believed it was the best solution in her situation. Her assistant tried to convince the woman that other options could be found to solve the problem, but she hated it when someone started pointing at her, so she immediately shut the man up. She understood the consequences perfectly well, but believed that there was no other way. Anna suggested that the assistant deal with the guy and confess to everyone about it. No one would be held accountable for the death of a Christian, but someone would have to answer for the death of the Viscount's son. The man understood that he had no other choice, so he agreed. He felt disappointed and hoped that the young master would be able to overcome everything and stand his ground. Meanwhile, a peace treaty was signed and the army was able to return home. Otis, Adrian, and the other commanders discussed the hero's achievements. Everyone was eagerly awaiting the boy's award. Thanks to his exploits, others also received privileges and awards. Otis suggested that it would have been beneficial for the boy if the war had continued, as he would have been able to receive even more awards. Thus, Adrian could become a lord. A hero could receive a title for his achievements, but that would not mean he would own the lands. And such a title could not be passed down by inheritance, so he was not interested in that. He wanted to deal with his brother and become the heir to the Viscount. At that moment, Otis offered the hero to become a member of his family. Since he had a daughter, the man decided to marry her to Adrian. The hero promised to think about his proposal, but he wasn't interested. Adrian only thought about being able to return home. And when he returns, things will happen that will greatly surprise Anna and Cedric. The day after the signing of the peace treaty, the provincial army was withdrawn. Every time the hero had free time, he ran to increase his level. In order to advance to the next level of the quest, he must be level 250, and at that time, he was only level 202. The hero felt that his fighting ability had greatly improved after the battle with the Death Knight. The stronger he became, the stronger his opponent was, and the experience limit also increased. Therefore, the hero considered this a problem not only for him, but for the entire team. The monster they defeated required 5 people, so it took a lot of energy. The guy even considered another team member, but decided he needed to stay away from the other players. So I took it as a lesson in patience and as a good experience. Suddenly, he felt that something was happening in reality, so he left the game. It turned out that the same spies had come as those who had come to Perseus. There were 3 of them, and they all had special equipment with magic swords. Since William was ready to attack, he held them back and had 5 officers of the advance guard fight them. But another not-so-weak opponent appeared before them. It was an armored golem. Then Adrian realized that Anna had decided to take care of him instead of William and Perseus. They decided to use the Staff of Istro against the monster. When Anna's people saw Adrian fighting his rivals, they were shocked. They didn't understand how the boy could hide his powers from the Lawrence family. The opponents could not retreat because the guy did not allow them to teleport. There was no point in running away because it was impossible. Therefore, one of the rivals, having split the capsule with poison which was attached to his teeth, died. Since the hero had little experience meeting such people, he underestimated their determination. When the men heard that the young master Adrian was a student of the Duke of Riverdale, you couldn't believe it, because the guy was constantly playing online games. No one had the slightest doubt about the Duke's talent, and even William believed at home that Adrian had been able to reach such a level because he was very capable. In reality, the guy had been hatching a plan for the future for a long time and was deceiving everyone with his dishonest behavior in order to survive. When the motorcade arrived at the apartment, Adrian was met at the door by his mother. She immediately asked if he was injured because she was very worried about him. The father approached the boy and also praised him. Adrian expected to be greeted with a solemn welcome, but there was no one around. His father apologized to him for not having greeted him with dignity. Adrian was sure that it was Anna and Cedric who had a hand in this, because they did not want to meet the one who was supposed to die on the way. All the deputies expressed great gratitude for having the opportunity to fight alongside the hero. Then the father realized that the war had taught the boy a lot. At that moment, Cedric and Anna approached the boy. They looked at the boy as if disgusted that he was still alive. But Adriana was concerned about her butler's behavior. The boy knew that he had served Anya faithfully for 30 years and was her eyes and ears. But for some reason, he was drawn to the boy. Behind the woman stood Commander Crown Dine. Cedric came closer to the boy and admitted that the hero had not disgraced the good name of their family. At that moment, Adrian wanted to cut off their heads, but he was forced to stick to the plan. And I also decided not to tolerate all the verbal attacks on me anymore. Adrian found it funny to hear such aggressiveness from his brother, as if he had been able to achieve something in life. The guy wanted to provoke his enemies so he could have an explanation for why he killed them. Cedric didn't like this manner of communication. The hero reported that even you spoke about Cedric behind his back, that he was an infantile fool, and this made him very angry. Anna and Cedric glared at the boy, but suddenly Cedric laughed out loud. He drew his sword and, pointing it at the boy, said that he had completely lost his fear. Father and Sylvia tried to calm the boys down and didn't want Cedric to ruin their day. Cedric believed that Adrian had no right to violate the hierarchy of their family. The guy also accused William of making Adrian fight with their family. Cedric ordered the knights to capture William, but they ignored his order. One of them replied that he should arrest Mr. William, and this angered the boy even more. At that moment, he attacked Adrian, but Arisha, grabbing his hand, stopped him. Cedric noticed that she was very strong because he could not resist, but after striking, Arisha quickly dealt with him. Although the beginning was very pompous, at the end, Cedric got punched in the face by a girl who was much smaller than him. Then Commander Crown drew his sword and tried to stop Adrian, but the hero believed that his brother had committed so many crimes that they couldn't even count them. Cedric ordered the commander to deal with everyone because no one had the right to beat him. Crown replied that he had no right to harm a member of the Lawrence family, so he could not hit Adrian. But it didn't concern the girl. After all, there was simply no forgiveness for a person who raised his hand against a person of blue blood, so he moved the sword to her neck. But at that moment, all the knights who had rebelled against the man came to the girl's defense. He ordered them to leave Aricia immediately because the girl did not belong to the Lawrence family. The commander did not understand what was happening and why the entire army rose up to protect the girl. Cedric's knights were also on their side. This seemed very strange to the commander, but suddenly at that moment, many people appeared behind Anna coming to reinforce them. Cedric ordered his men to deal with Adrian immediately. Although there were many more knights than the hero, they were in civilian clothes and had no weapons with them. Adrian understood that if they went to battle, it could end very badly for him. Crown believed that the boy had simply forgotten his place and had come intoxicated by his victories at the front. The hierarchy of that family could not be changed, and the commander believed that it was because of Adrian that the knights he had deceived could suffer. They didn't want to kill the boy, but they promised that from now on he would live in hellish conditions, much worse than before. At that moment, his father shouted for Adrian to use the wedding rings he had given him. Cedric's men pointed their weapons at Adrian and his team. Then Adrian ordered his knights to protect their lord. The guy ordered Arisa to deal with the others, and he would deal with Cedric, Anna, and the commander himself. Adrian walked up to the commander and punched him in the face. Crown realized that the girl turned out to be a master of aura, and he also couldn't recover from the fact that the guy struck first. He ordered his men to immediately gather around the knights and fight them off. At that time, the hero behaved calmly, and then he said that he was a teacher who would teach the man a lesson. They were able to use spells 2 levels below their own without casting. And if you were a 7th circle magician, you could use 5th circle magic without uttering a spell or making gestures. And they also had the skill of the Archmage's certificate, which showed the officer of the advanced detachment, the magician killer, that in front of him was an archmage who was stronger than him. When a mage became an archmage, he no longer had the weaknesses of all the mages of the time between the castanets. After striking the commander, Adrian turned to Anna and Cedric. He said it was time to pay for all the mischief they had done to him. Crown tried to get in the way, but the boy struck again and he fell to the ground. Anna and her son were shocked by what they saw, because they did not expect this from the weakling Adrian. They couldn't understand how Adrian Lawrence became the Archmage. Meanwhile, Mark Count Raven learned what was happening in the palace and became very angry. The video of the events that took place has already gone viral on all social networks. People were already discussing the fact that it was Anna's father who supported her and Cedric in their act of betrayal. The same opinion was held among the nobles. But the man was sure that no matter how strong the team, which consisted of the Archmage and the Aura Master, would be, they would not be able to change that world. And also supporting their pair would mean enmity with Margrave Raven, who possessed as much military power as the Marquis and Duke combined. Adriana wouldn't mind bringing in a Marquis or Duke ally to even the score a little with Mark Count Raven, but such an alliance was unlikely, as the Marquis and Duke would not have been very happy with the competition in the form of a young mentor, the Viscount. The man decided that they could expose them as imposters, and if people had doubts that they really possessed the claimed abilities, then the problem would solve itself. Raven suggested claiming that the video was a fake, but people could bring in an expert and then their argument could fall apart. Therefore, it was decided that they needed to deal with Adrian and his team before they could order an examination. The Margrave also believed that their main goal would be war. Therefore, he wondered how many people could rise up under arms to wage war for territory. As it turned out, about half of the contingent could rebel, and they also wanted to set up 3 sky fortresses and 200 advanced detachment officers. After thinking for a few minutes, Raven agreed to the terms as he believed that no one dared to provoke him into battle. The man wanted the boy to regret starting that war. Meanwhile, Adrian assumed that Raven, having watched the video, was already preparing for an attack. Since Anna, Cedric, and Mark Count Raven are still inseparable, the hero decided that his revenge would not be complete until he dealt with Raven. But first, for security reasons, the guy wanted to improve his position in society. The guy came to the daughter of the famous magician Cain Riverdale and called herself Olivia Riverdale. The Duchess of Riverdale was an archmage and a subject of the Kingdom of Luas. She was said to be a mage who barely made it to the 8th circle and was effectively the matriarch of the Riverdale house after her father's death. Unlike the hero, who received his 7 circles through quests, the girl was a truly capable sorceress who reached the 7th circle through hard work. He brought her a plate to check. When Olivia saw it, it seemed very plausible, and she believed that such a sign could easily be forged. At that moment, Adrian felt that her people were resonating with their circles of magic and trying to suppress his will. Therefore, the hero decided to ask why they did it. As it turned out, they just wanted to check the guy's level. But she decided to see the limits of his power most accurately. Although the girl looked very elegant, the boy did not like her methods. She didn't care whether the boy was her father's apprentice or not. She just wanted to collaborate with a powerful archmage. Having established the boy's identity, Olivia decided to listen to the boy. Meanwhile, Raven prepared for the offensive and gathered his army. But suddenly one of the servants approached him and suggested watching a certain video. In the video, Olivia announced that the heir Adrian was her late father's apprentice and also the archmage of the 7th circle in his 20s. She reported that the boy had a rare talent for magic and could soon reach the 8th circle, and also that the Riverdale family will do everything to support him in his endeavors and development of his abilities. Raven was shocked by what he saw, and it even seemed to him that Adrian read his mind. Since Riverdale was involved in this situation, the attention of the royal family was inevitable. The girl also warned that if anyone tried to harm the boy, they would perceive it as an act of aggression against her family. At that moment, Raven ordered them to set off. He wanted to achieve his main goal as quickly as possible, but he didn't think about the consequences at all. Everyone tried to convince the man that the expedition should be cancelled, but he was against it. He was confident that believing that they would not attack him, it was the most suitable time for a surprise attack. Meanwhile, Adrian sat in his office and contemplated his meeting with Olivia. When the matter came to revenge, the boy did not want to rely on anyone because revenge was a personal pleasure. He wanted everything to be according to his plan and under his leadership. After all, those people were his prey. Therefore, he did not want to share the pleasure of hunting his enemies with anyone. Meanwhile, Anna, Cedric, and the butler decided to deal with Adrian themselves and wanted to activate the Sky Fortress. Entering it, Anna activated the fortress and ordered the cannons to be prepared for a fiery assault. But at that moment, a hero appeared behind her. Smiling, he thanked the woman for activating the Sky Fortress. She couldn't understand how he got in there. Meanwhile, Aricia wanted to deal with Cedric. Adrian understood that Anna wanted to bomb the apartment with the help of a Sky Fortress, and thus her crimes only multiplied. And since Mark Earl Raven was almost at their border, the boy wanted his brother and Anna to defend the window with their bodies. This is exactly the reaction the hero expected to see from the woman. Anna wanted to somehow resolve the situation and calm the guy down. Aricia pulled Cedric and threw him towards Anna. Cedric didn't understand why Adrian did this to them. At that moment, the hero used a large shield around his opponents, and the knights who followed Anna admitted that they had committed a crime by going against the hero. Then Hadrian decided to throw them from the heavenly fortress to the ground. After that, he decided to re-upload the video on social media. As it turned out, Anna's crime was completely captured on camera. When her father saw the video, he wanted to execute every person who insulted him in the virtual world. One of his subordinates reported that one heavenly fortress and 200 officers of the advanced detachment were assembled and ready to return. But Raven ordered you to go only forward. Opening the portal, his army went on the offensive. At that moment, the man himself thought that he also needed to go there. Adrian sensed that his rivals had arrived. Therefore, he immediately ordered an attack on Mana to be launched. At that moment, Cedric began to apologize to his brother and asked him not to leave them. But Adrian was simply applying the experience he had gained in the war. This was called a kamikaze attack. Raising his glass, he said goodbye to Madame Anna and brother Cedric. Adrian told Alice that when you watch fireworks, you should make a wish. No wine was as sweet as that moment of revenge, for he had destroyed Anna and his brother, who were his constant enemies. Now the boy was completely free. Meanwhile, Raven waited for contact with the team. He believed they should have completed the operation long ago. The agents from the Viscount's castle also had no connection, as the connection was cut off at the time of Anne's arrest. The man suggested that this had all been planned in advance. He couldn't believe that he had been passed over by a young man who was younger than his grandson. Dennis Lugov found an article on the social network stating that, about an hour ago, a state of emergency was declared in the Viscount's capital and residents were evacuated. At the moment when communication was lost, a large explosion occurred in the sky. A few minutes later, communication with the window was established and the Lawrence family issued an appeal. The man was immediately interested in how many people he could send to war. Although he had previously had the strength of 5 heavenly fortresses, currently he was only pulling at 1.5. Rhubarb realized that Adrian had sacrificed his sky fortress to blow him up in the sky. Although his fortress was old, their fortresses had no chance of surviving a mana blast from close range. This only meant that Adrian was well aware of the rivals' plans. Suddenly, an urgent message arrived from the royal family prohibiting the use of military force against the Lawrences. Raven realized that he had paid dearly for underestimating the boy. He thought about somehow rebuilding his army, but he knew it would take a lot of time and money. One small mistake in their family's military might, which he had built up over generations, was destroyed. Raven ordered him to be connected to Andrian immediately. The Black Eagle, like Aricia, was a companion, but its use was completely different. Since the girl looked like a human, she could do a lot. The Black Eagle was an additional satellite, and its function was limited only to combat support and reconnaissance. Adrian thought Revan was very impudent, since he dared to call him. The man admitted that the boy was very smart, but he didn't think his luck would last long. Adrian revealed that Anna and Cedric were dead, and also warned that he would continue to seek revenge. The man was not going to forgive the boy for the death of his family, but Adrian paid no attention to his words. And then he said he had a surprise for him. Adrian said that the 10 spells of the 7th circle were pronounced simultaneously, and most likely even the vaunted shield of Raven Castle will not be able to repel such an attack. At that moment, an eagle approached the building. This was Adrian's gift to Minecraft. The building in which the man was located collapsed. William approached Adrian and informed him that journalists were waiting for him in the conference room. Previously, all the servants in the house had looked at him as a weakling. But now everything had changed, and everyone bowed their heads in homage to the Lord, but trembled in his presence. Adrian managed to say goodbye to his past in which he played the fool. Now the second stage of his beautiful life has begun. Adrian went to give an interview. He answered all the questions that people were interested in. Thus, in a day, 1 million subscribers appeared on the guy's channel. William was worried that people were blaming the boy for attacking an influential nobleman, but Adrian believed that there was no point in thinking about people's reactions. After all, at the present time, no one could stop him. The incident with Markgraf caused a stir in the country and abroad. Revan had all the influence, so some journalists wrote big articles about the guy, but the people were on his side. Nobles treated ordinary people like slaves, but the boy was different and could use the people for his own purposes. His father informed Adrian that he had been ordered to report to the inspector. The guy missed that Mark the Count could have arranged it, or the nobles decided to teach them a lesson. Everyone wondered if the guy had some kind of plan. Most of all, nobles loved money. Therefore, Adrian decided to force them to change their minds with the help of money and believed that many would be interested, even from the royal family, since the hero has earned a fairly large sum for investment, and if he agrees to pay taxes on that amount, the nobles will immediately be appeased. Everyone was shocked when they found out that the guys managed to accumulate 60 trillion. The guy decided how to spend his money. He had to say goodbye to a fifth of his savings. He decided to purchase sky fortresses for them and hire advanced detachment officers. After some time, the news reported that Adrian Lawrence had paid taxes to the state on his investment income. When Commander Otis saw the news, he was pleasantly surprised. He believed that the boy knew how to surprise people. The man and his wife discussed the fact that he wanted to introduce his daughter to Adrian, but the guy had a very high opinion of himself. The girl liked him too, but she didn't want to be a fixture. Therefore, she decided to earn authority herself, which would be equal to the guy. The girl wanted to find out the fate of Archmage Lucas. The mother tried to calm her daughter down and said that she was doing something stupid. My opinion on the fact that the fate of the magician had already been found by young Lawrence, because even Riverdale accepted the guy as one of their own, but the royal treasury claimed that all his money was from investments. Suddenly, urgent news broke that the Republic of Prius had announced that its residents had found the fate of Manuel Lucas. The events moved to the Manuel Lucas Tower. The hero's days were scheduled hourly, but he couldn't help but take the time to read the books from Lucas's library. The weapons invented by Manuel Lucas changed the modern way of warfare, but the man himself was a pacifist. Most of Manuel Lucas devoted himself to studying teleportation between worlds. He was single and hadn't even found a foster parent, only the way home. Everyone talked about him as someone who changed this world, but in reality, he had wanted to get back to planet Earth all his life. The guy even wondered if Lucas wanted someone to continue his experiment, so he decided to try to do it. A moment later, a little magician approached the boy. Adrian was curious about whether they would be caught laundering money. Bribing the nobles to cover up the incident with Count Mark was a good idea. The hero attracted a lot of attention. If someone finds out that he took Manuel Lucas's entire inheritance, he will have a very good chance of losing everything. Meanwhile, the city was welcoming a national hero. It was Louis Fairmont. That year, he turned 29 years old. The guy was an intellectual agent of the Prius Republic and the son of President Cartro. The second-generation tycoon shamelessly used his father's name. The task of the fake meeting master was to make someone behave like the lucky person of meeting the Archmage Manuel Lucas and distract the world community from the hero. This operation could remove any doubts people had about Adrian and buy time until he reached the 9th circle. Adrian had no regrets at all. He didn't think it was right to leave the name of Archmage Manuel to someone like a boy. The Republic of Prius was considered one of the 4 major empires of Rondel. But in reality, corruption and deals between politicians and businessmen were destroying the country, and the state perpetrators and the press were the ruling dogs. They were no different from the dictatorship where the president held office for 14 years. Adrian hoped that no one else besides Lewis and the carton would fall victim to such incidents. When the bomb called the lying Lord of Happy Meeting explodes, Lewis and the president will have a very hard time finding a safe place. In this case, the operation will reveal many victims who are not at all guilty. Therefore, the hero asked the little magician to help him recognize them. The magician, in turn, asked about the deaths of Anna, Cedric, and the Markgraf. Their task was to prevent the appearance of victims, so there was no mercy even towards the enemies. At that time, Adrian was at level 205, so taking the Aresia and the Eagle, he went hunting. Sometimes it seemed to him that an eternity would come before he reached level 250, so they set out to achieve their goal. Meanwhile, rumors were spreading in the palace that the young lord was planning to acquire 5 celestial fortresses. They did not understand how this was possible because the maximum number of celestial fortresses that a viscountcy and barony could possess was limited to only one. And Lord also wanted to bring into line the military restrictions on the Vanguard's power tools. People also didn't understand whether it was normal to have so many lords in one family. Hadrian was not just a new great nobleman, but one who would be endowed with appropriate military abilities. In other words, a new power has emerged in the kingdom of Reinhard. Because most of the people in the Lord's castle were on Anna's side at the time when Anna was not there, they understood that they were walking on thin ice every day. And although the Lawrence family did not want to catch the young lord's eye, since they had many sins to their credit, they also weren't going to leave work since the situation was good and there was a possibility of tomorrow. One of the maids came to Arisha at her request and brought her a snack. The servants quarreled among themselves because many wanted to serve Lady Arisha. Despite her fearsome title of Aura Master, Lady Arisha had a very gentle nature, and also a soft smile that she often hid. The maid believed that the girl was just a human being, but the fact that she was able to obtain the title of Count was incredible to her. Then she decided to ask Arisha a question. She wondered if young Lord Adrian wanted to dismiss the castle's managers. Arisha replied that the hero was a very kind person, but he could not stand it when anyone suffered because of him. Hearing this, the girl was delighted. But Arisha added that the boy was cold towards those he considered his enemies. And then I asked if the girl belonged to this category. In an excited voice, the maid replied that she had no such intention towards the lord. At that moment, Adrian entered the room. Seeing him, the maid immediately ran out into the corridor. That day, gossip spread that Adrian never forgot affection and malice. Arisha was unrestrained towards the one who encroached on her fiancé. When the war against the Croatian Empire was in full swing, despite the increased level in the game, there was one more thing that really interested the hero, searching for talents with great potential using his magic points. So he decided to give his 2 talents the opportunity to gain more experience. At that time, there were 4 officers serving with Lopez and Eric who were members of the Gifted Talent Institute. Therefore, they were sent to the royal castle for an investigation by the Audit and Inspection Commission for the Nobles. Adrian ordered his team to catch a glimpse of those who ruled the country with their own eyes. Arriving in the capital of the Kingdom of Reinhard, the hero told you to prepare. Arriving at the royal government building, people gathered at the door to see the Lord and his team. But the powerful class didn't like the fact that people came to see Adrian. But as it turned out, the hero was likable among the nobles, as he earned his place through his own merits. He was informed about this by Baron Harris, who was the chief manager and leader of the noble inspection. Realizing that he had said too much, the Baron apologized to Adrian and asked him to forget everything. Adrian handed him his business card because he thought about appointing a talented manager who could take care of everything without any problems. Therefore, he suggested that Baron become him. After entering the building, they walked together to the investigation office. Only Lawrence and Madame Klein were allowed to enter, and the others had to wait in the lounge. The Baron warned the hero, however, to be careful. Adrian didn't know what was going to happen there, but the chief inspector wasn't happy with him. When they went inside, they saw many men sitting at the table in front of them. Among them were the chief inspector of nobles, Douglas Hemington, and the second prince, commander of the royal guard, Luquin. Adrian and Arisha came closer and bowed their heads to greet the commander of the royal guard. Luke warned that he would be conducting this inspection. At this moment, the hero felt that one of the people present was uncomfortable. Sitting down, Luke suggested that the inspection begin. The check was routine, and the guy was sure that even if they had something against him, he had an alibi at that time. Therefore, they had no choice but to call the boy a viscount. The men began to argue among themselves about this. The guy was even a little nervous, as his relationship with one of the people present was tense. At that moment, one of the men decided that there was no point in continuing the investigation because everything had been clarified. But Hamilton believed that Raven was a strong enough force, so he did not want to give in to Adrian. Prince Luke suggested that Adrian switch sides before his brothers did. At that moment, the hero understood the true purpose of the prince's stay there. Since the first principal was already crowned, and the second prince became a master of the aura, they were on equal footing. But the idea that the second prince had gone this far while the first prince had full right of succession and status only meant that the forces were on Prince Luke's side. The army of the Mark Counts was broken in half, but this was not enough to resolve the situation. Therefore, the problem was not only in the abilities of the guy and Arisha, but also in the fact that Adrian was quite rich. They were the main players in the arena who could upset the balance of power. Far from being the best player on the political field, and his title was still unofficial, but Luke believed that if Lord joined him, he would appreciate his status and work in the last war, and will help Adrian obtain the title of Marquis. The offer seemed very interesting to the hero, and he realized that he was truly important to Luke. Besides, there was such a magical aura master next to the guy. Adrian wanted to think about the prince's position, but Luke added that wizards should be careful, especially those who have hidden this life of theirs. Therefore, the prince gave the boys a week to think about it, and then he asked if he thought the crown belonged to the one who had the right to it. If the rightful heir gains the crown, the kingdom will be in existential danger. Luke was also captivated by Orisha's beauty and skill. The prince expressed his hope that they could duel in the future, as he had never met a female aura master. One of the men whispered to the boy not to think and just accept the offer, because the prince was not used to accepting rejections. Leaving the room, Adrian offered Orisha a snack. One of the men heard their conversation and approached them. This was the first Prince Michael Wang, the supreme mage of the Fifth Circle. No one present noticed him because of the spell that changed his face. But Adrian immediately understood who the boy was, but he decided that he shouldn't make an enemy of the prince, so they went with him for a snack. As he followed the prince, Adriano pondered the fact that he had never seen a person with 3 very high talents in his life, and the combination of his fortunes was even higher than in Orisha. However, in addition to the 3 very high-level talents, the first prince had 2 more high-level talents. His mana was low, but thanks to his wisdom, he could become a mage supreme. Adrian reported that the boy was an even more mysterious personality than his younger brother. They approached the teleportation room. The hero believed that teleportation magic could not be used inside the palace because there were spell blockers throughout the territory. The prince turned off the magic block and suggested we move on. Then the boy realized that the first prince was no ordinary man. Upon entering, the prince announced that they could now speak freely, and by pressing the button, the magic blocking everything from the outside was active again. Adrian was sure that the second prince definitely did not know that the first prince was playing with the defense system as he wanted. The hero extended his hand to the prince because he considered it an honor to meet him. The prince ordered the butler to set the table as he was going to have dinner with his guests. Michael told the hero about how he personally hired servants for the palace and assured him that his chef cooked perfectly. And also, as it turned out, the prince was following the guy on social media. Michael held the position of crown prince, but treated Adrian as his best friend. He didn't seem like the type to pretend and didn't look at all like the second prince. The first and second princes seemed to him like 2 opposites. Adrian understood why the prince had invited them to his place, so he asked what he could offer them. He was going to make a profitable offer after ascending the throne. And he also did not stop the hero from obtaining the title of Viscount. After all, he understood that the title of Windows was not so easy to obtain when the power was divided. The reason Michelle didn't promise the boy titles like Prince Luke was because they were all empty promises. After all, it didn't matter. You could easily get past him here if the other side objected to it. Michelle's words that he would not interfere meant that the prince would help obtain that title as long as Adrian was on the side of the second prince. He announced that his side would not object if Lawrence received the title of Viscount by joining Prince Luke's faction, because after that the boy could switch to his side. Adrian understood that at that moment he was in the role of the Joker and the side he chose would have the advantage. If he accepts this offer, he will be able to receive the title and unite with the crown prince. And if he refuses, his title will pass him by and the boy will have to unite with the second prince. So he decided to accept Michael's offer. Adrian believed that he listened to Tron more than the second prince. Aricia also supported the hero because she believed that as long as everything was going well for him, she would follow him. After that, the prince added that Aricia and Adrian looked beautiful together. The hero was also interested in the question of whether Prince Luke would suspect something if Michelle did not deny his title. So the prince decided to first pretend that he was preventing this and then give it back. Adrian, there was no reason to just back down, and this was a chance to get rid of an opponent. Because even Mark Count Raven suffered great damage by contacting the boy and lost 40% of his strength due to personal enmity. Therefore, Adrian believed that the man did not deserve the title of Margrave. Therefore, the hero wanted to take away the title from Revan in exchange for granting him the title of Viscount. After all, he derived the greatest satisfaction from destroying hostility at its root. The guy wanted to get his title of Windows and for his services in the war. Therefore, it was the most suitable time to promote one of the counts who had also achieved success in the war. The crown prince was surprised by the boy's proposal. He asked who the hero had met on the prince's side before meeting him. Adrian reported that it was Baron Walken, who had taken him to Prince Luke and Viscount Hemington, and there were also 6 other inspectors there for his interrogation. Although Adrian could not read minds, he could read people with the help of his glasses. So I understood Michelle was confused, fearing that his plan had been foiled because Adrian spoke about him verbatim and the prince didn't even mention him. Thus, the prince appreciated the hero's impressive abilities. Mikkel held out the phone to contact Adrian. It was a secure device that no one could listen to, and they could communicate safely through it. After that, Adrian and Arisha set off back. They moved to a warehouse near the entrance. Not far away, they saw William and one of the boys from the team. As Adrian got closer, he saw that they were hiding something behind their backs. These were stocks of Sir Adrian and Madame Klein figurines, which were sold in the souvenir shops inside the castle. Meanwhile, the news reported that in the Empire, the tax rate on Prius had increased by 12%. Brutal corruption progressed, forcing the island of Rhesus to try to become a republic. The hope of the republic lay in the hands of the lucky recipient of the fortune, Manuel Lucas, son of President Louis Fairmont. The question is whether the president's son was really able to obtain the fate of Archduke Manuel Lucas. The events have moved to the palace of the Brigham Empire, the Golden Dragon Castle. The emperor of the empire, Edward, believed that they deserved a greater fate because they invested a lot of resources and energy in the search for their destiny. The head of intelligence was Countess Elfrida. She wasn't sure Prius would really get the part. As she looked at their investigative process compared to them, they approached it with very old methods, and there were also many other nuances that did not match the search options. Therefore, the woman suspected that someone else had discovered Lucas's fate and had brought it upon the Prius Empire to divert attention. She believed that this person could already attract attention to himself, or there was some other obstacle to this. Therefore, they needed to examine all possible options in detail. The person who truly controlled Manuel's destiny had manipulative skills on a national level. The king believed that there were 4 countries that could do this: the Croatian Empire, the United Kingdom of Alesia, the Kingdom of Lucia, and the Kingdom of Reinhard. And he also heard that a young man appeared in the Kingdom of Reinhard who reached the 7th circle at the age of 20. And after his appearance, the country became very restless, and the Kingdom of Lucia recognized him as a secret disciple of Riverdale. But the news said that many stock exchanges confirmed that the boy was fine and there was no evidence that he had the same fate as Lucas. Once upon a time, there was someone in their empire with a greater talent than Adrian Lawrence. And since the Kingdom of Reinhard already had problems with the heir to the throne, it was not profitable for them to lead everyone by the nose. Therefore, the king ordered increased surveillance, including the royal family, and also to send a serious warning to the empire because the fate is the property of their country, and they wanted to show the whole world who they really were. The king believed that the destruction of the country for the sake of the Archduke's fate was a very small price to pay. He also ordered to connect with the young man from Reinhardt and offer him immigration. The man believed that he would be better off as a count in their great empire than where he was now. Events moved to the home of the High Lord of the Northwest, to the eldest daughter of Margrave Cascabel, Isabella Cascabel. The girl told how Adrian locked his brother and his mother in a flying fortress and killed them because they bothered him. Everyone present could not believe what the girl was saying because they considered the guy to be a smart lord. One of the men asked if this girl was bothering him because she was the one who bothered the hero the most. But she didn't think Adrian would easily be able to get revenge on them. After all, times have changed, and it was no longer the same side when they trembled in fear before one great magician and aura expert. The girl understood that it would be difficult to strike any direct blow if Adrian became a count, but since Isabella was summoned by her father, she could no longer continue the conversation and went to him. Along the way, she remembered Adrian and his shining silver hair and blue eyes. His appearance was hard to miss, even at the academy where many of his fellow students were gathering. Previously, no matter what they did, Adrian didn't react to it in any way, but when it came to just a little person, he stood up for her. The girl always really liked Adrian because she saw his handsome face. She believed that she would not be able to harm the Count without any political endeavors to a girl who had led the social circle in 6 generations of the Margrave family. When she came to Mark's father, Count Cascabel, she heard that His Majesty Luke had promised Adrian Lawrence the title of Marquis. Isabella couldn't believe what she was hearing, but Luke believed that Sir Lawrence fully deserved the title. Moreover, the guy became a magician of the 7th circle, and next to him was a talent with the potential of a grandmaster, who was equal to the power of a magician of the 8th circle. Therefore, the father ordered his daughter to take advantage of her position in society and establish a connection with him. The girl was outraged by what she heard, but she couldn't do anything about it. Returning to her team, she ordered them to listen to her immediately. But when I saw that they were all already drunk, I realized that I had to rely only on myself. The first thing the hero did after returning from the royal palace was finally go online and play Chronicle. He decided to disguise Arisha even better because if anyone recognized her, there could be big problems. After that, the hero had a conversation with the original accountant, who asked if Adrian planned to enter the military industry. Grant had 3 high-ranking abilities like his father, Therefore, Hadrian decided that the military industry would be a great prey, and that was his plan. Hadrian decided to start with a tool for the avant-garde. Currently, the production of equipment for the vanguard is divided between three families in the kingdom of Reinhardt. The equipment for the vanguard was made under the supervision of powerful people in the kingdom. The accountant believed that those in power at that moment would not tolerate such a thing. But Hadrian did not consider this a threat, and initially wanted to make a similar technique, or one that was less powerful. There were only 4 great magicians in the Reinhardt kingdom, and only 2 of them could create such a technique. And it was a flying fortress. Therefore, the guy wanted to give it his all and was looking forward to starting work. During a conversation with his father, Hadrian said that he decided to accept the second prince's offer because he saw no reason to refuse. The father was surprised because since his son returned from the war, there had been no day without surprises. The hero also reported that the title of Marquis was not enough and he wanted to become king of the entire country and start a harem. The parents didn't know how to react to the boy's words. After all, his girlfriend was sitting next to him. Hadrian told everyone that Aricia was his lover, whom he wanted to marry in the future. The guy also warned that he would soon be given an important assignment, so he would like to continue the work that had been postponed. He wanted to deal with Anna and Cedric's vassals who served them, as well as punish the servants who had harmed him and his mother. Meanwhile, in the king's palace, there was talk that Hadrian was a rare genius and a great magician. The question arose as to whether the hero should have been given the title of Viscount, as he had many arguments for this. Michael believed that his brother had enlisted, and that was why he was very supportive of him. A dispute arose between the brothers about this. Michel tried to persuade Luke to allow Count Raven to leave his post as Margrave. But Luke wasn't sure that this would be the right decision. But his brother tried to convince him that Raven would be able to retain his position as Earl, but a new Marquess would be added to their ranks. Luke did not want to risk his people for the sake of gain, so he did not agree to his brother's request. Michel decided to make another suggestion. The boy hoped that Earl Otis, who had made a great contribution as commander of Lawrence, would be appointed Mark Earl. Michel admitted that the hero made a great contribution to that war, but believed that half of the boy's merits belonged to his commander, Count Otis. Luke thought about his brother's proposal. The king stopped their conversation and told them not to argue with each other. He decided to accept the requests of Crown Prince Michael and Prince Luke. A few days after that, Victory Day arrived. Hadrian and his family arrived at the royal palace. The hero wanted to dress Aricia in a dress too, but a little later. Suddenly, several people approached the boy. It was the noble Viscount Doherty, the nobleman Viscount Parma, the noblewoman of the Viscountess Karma, that noblewoman Viscountess Ronnie. Seeing them, the hero smiled and felt as if he missed them. But when he returned, he said he would talk to them later when he had enough time. The boy's mother asked if these were his friends. As it turned out, these were the hero's classmates, with whom he was not exactly good friends. Aricia immediately understood that the guy didn't like those people, but he decided to deal with them later. At the entrance, the Lawrence family was met by a butler and offered to show them to their seats. Their seats were at the table in the front row, so everyone was looking at them. Other nobles approached the Lawrences and asked many incomprehensible questions. Hadrian realized that all the high-ranking aristocrats were aware of his new title of Marquis. At that moment, Count Raven passed him by. Seeing him, Hadrian realized that the man had already been warned about the changes that were to occur. Meanwhile, the Victory Day celebration ceremony was beginning. The king announced that Count Otis was being awarded the Order of the Golden Lion, the border city of Orti, and he was also appointed border margrave of Aegis. Hadrian realized that the count was also on the side of the crown prince. Next to the hatch sat a man who was known as the sword master in all the kingdoms, Marquis Vincent. The hero felt that the aura experts of that kingdom were very interested in Aricia. At that moment, the king invited Hadrian and Aricia to his place. Adrian Lawrence was granted the title of Marquis and the lands of Marinkov as a residence. And Aricia was granted the title of Countess and the land of Klendal as a residence. In addition, they presented each new lord with titles in the heavenly fortress. Aricia and Adrian thanked for the award. The guests were shocked as they did not expect the guy to be given the title of Marquis so suddenly. Rising from his knees, Adrian thanked the crown prince and second prince for the kindness shown to him and also expressed his gratitude. The guy said that there was one thing he really wanted to do when he became an aristocrat with a name. Calling his classmates by name, the hero declared territorial war on their families. Everyone was shocked by what they heard. The king of the kingdom in those days felt a lot of excitement, which was associated with the heir to the throne. He was worried that his sons were divided and each wanted to become ruler. Therefore, the news of the territorial war simply drove the man crazy. Luke didn't expect the typical student to be such an aggressor. He wondered if Adrian knew that the new lord had no right to expand his territories for at least a year. Therefore, the hero decided to simply destroy those four families and return them to Earth to the king's possessions. Luke was very disappointed with the boy's behavior and he wondered what would happen next. But Adrian himself expected this reaction. Even before the holiday began, everyone was in a hurry to exchange greetings with the family, but after the guy's words, no one else came up. The hero realized that he had become the main villain in his family. Adrian's father also couldn't understand why the boy had gone so far, but he heard that the boy simply wanted revenge for all the harm done to him. Although declaring war on all four families was very dangerous, Adrian didn't want to worry about it at all. Then the father approached his son and said that he believed in him. And then he added that it had been a long time since he had attended banquets hosted by the royal family, so he decided to enjoy it. The man asked Sylvia not to worry about her son but to simply believe in him. He extended his hand to his wife and asked her to dance. All that time, Lawrence had been tiptoeing in front of Anna, but now he could fully take care of the hero's mother. Seeing his happy parents, Adrian decided to continue where he had stopped. Meanwhile, the boy's classmates decided to unite against Adrian. They believed that the guy would not be able to overcome the cohesion of their team. But at that moment, Adrian appeared behind them and overheard their conversation. I decided to make my classmates respect me. Throwing a glove in the face of the Viscount of Parma, he challenged him to a duel. But the conversation was interrupted by the heads of four families. They believed that the boy had gone too far and had no right to arrange a duel. Therefore, he warned that a letter declaring territorial war would arrive within a week. And then he added that their next meeting would be on the battlefield. At that moment, Isabella approached the crowd of people. She couldn't understand what was happening there. The next day, all over the news, the newly minted Marquis Lawrence had declared territorial war on the four families. Meanwhile, the boy was solving the problem of heavenly fortresses. His assistant showed the hero a catalog of celestial fortresses to choose from. Although people said that Adrian did not have enough military power for a territorial war, the hero decided to buy it. He bought all the fortresses that were offered in the catalog. This deal was so big that it seemed unreal to the guy. Stepping out into the corridor, Adrian met Margrave Otis. He informed him that he had bought all the fortresses. As expected, after Otis became Margrave, his military aid was equal to the title of Marquis. Without missing an opportunity, Otis decided to introduce the hero to his daughter. The girl introduced herself as Michelle and greeted Adrian. The hero also gladly introduced himself by name and introduced his bride, Arisha. Adrian had previously heard that the girl was a psycho with a terrible reputation, but in reality she seemed very nice to him. The system informed him that Michelle was interpreting in English, and this shocked him a little. Otis said that his daughter had been actively searching for the fate of the Archduke until that moment. But since it was reported that fate had been found in the Republic of Prius, Michelle fell into a deep depression. The girl was sure that the fortune found in the Prius was a fake. Michelle insisted that fate existed and was hidden in a location unknown to everyone. The details were classified, but she said that the location was very difficult to find as an aristocrat. No doubt aristocrats viewed the virtual system of Hollywood as a place for commoners who wanted to escape reality and fantasize. Michelle also shared her own take on the fact that she preferred self-made people like Marquis Lawrence. And the girl also wanted to communicate with the hero from time to time. Adrian agreed to her proposal and promised to send her an invitation as soon as possible. After the conversation, Aricia wondered if she should break up with Michelle, but Adrian decided to follow her a little longer. The guy wanted to get a good look at the girl. Meanwhile, four families who had been declared territorial war tried to join forces. They couldn't believe that some young scoundrel had decided to declare war on the nobles. The leaders believed that Adrian, as the new lord, would not have time to create a good knightly corps in order to fight worthily on the battlefield. They didn't know what to expect from the guy and kept the worst possible scenario in their heads. But one of the assistants reported that even before receiving the title, the guy posted an ad for hiring knights in his online diary. The announcement garnered about 4,000 comments from residents of the kingdoms, all of whom wanted to work for the hero. They also learned that Marcus Lawrence had purchased a magical fortress and an artifact manufacturing company, so there was no way to use magicians and equipment. The commanders understood that if war broke out, there was a high probability that they would have to confront the maximum number of forces that the hero could field. After all, the leader was the Archmage, who could also use his bride, an aura expert. Everyone was aware that a one-sided massacre was imminent. The commanders also assumed that the boy could enlist the surrounding territories to help, so they believed that they could also gather their allies and the war could escalate into a civil war. Then one of those present ordered the knight to bring to them the culprit of their assembly. The events moved to the residence of the Marquis Lawrence of the metropolis of Marinkov. The feelings that the hero felt at that moment were new to him, but looking at everything, he understood that he had become a great lord. William informed the boy that a nightly detachment had been assembled. The head of city security, Elena, considered Adrian an incredible mentor who quickly organized everything. And as many people were selected with experience, they could have been sent to a territorial war at that moment. Since Adrian received several celestial fortresses from the king as a gift, he decided to use them in his work as well. After that, the hero ordered to prepare for battle. It was necessary to finish all the preparations in 3 hours and divide the knights into 4 groups. William believed that they needed royal permission to start a war, but until permission was granted, Adrian ordered that it be considered a training exercise because it was a matter of time. This time, he decided not to simply give orders from a safe place, but to rush into battle without a drop of pity and show them his military power alongside Arisia. The events moved to the Viscountcy of Parma. A young girl named Elfrida pondered the recent events regarding Adrian. Duchess Olivia Riverdale approached her. One of the representatives of the vicarage asked Adrian why he had deployed his army in front of their vicarage, since he did not yet have permission to do so. Smiling, Adrian said that he was undergoing training. But the man understood that the boy wanted to attack immediately after receiving permission, and he also tried to explain to the hero that this violated moral norms. He thought it was pretty stupid to start a territorial war over school fights. Suddenly, Adrian received a phone call. From that moment on, he was given permission to start a territorial war. The royal family had a completely different opinion about this, so they gave permission. The man asked the hero to make the right rational decision about this. The only chance to survive this battle was to surrender. From that moment on, Adrian and Arisia joined the front lines. The guy decided to leave command to Perseus. A long time ago, a boy heard that even after revenge was complete, nothing remained but a sense of clarity. And in the end, revenge begat revenge. But his opinion differed from such a statement, because nothing gave a clearer sense of purpose than revenge. Starting with Anna and Cedric and ending with the thieves from the academy, the boy believed that destroying their existence would be his starting point into a new future. And most of all, he enjoyed watching his enemies writhe in pain. Lawrence's military power exceeded that of his competitors by more than twice, and there was also an aura expert and an archimandrite. Therefore, their chances of winning were close to 0. Therefore, the army of the young Lord of Parma decided that he should die alone at the hands of the Marquis of Lawrence. No one understood why everyone had to die because of him. After all, if those lower in rank die, they will blame only Parma, not Marquis Lorenz. One of the commanders brought the boy some vanguard equipment. They wanted him to get dressed and ask Marquis Lawrence to come out with him one-on-one. It was the Viscount's order. The guy didn't want to go to battle because he understood that he could die there. The commanders told the boy a plan of action to survive. Even if he hides in a corner, he will still become a victim of revenge. If he takes advantage of the Vanguard's equipment, he might be able to break through the Marquis' defenses and defeat him. Since the Marquis of Lawrence had neither a wife nor heirs, Parma could end the territorial war. Then the boy agreed to do it and decided to pretend to be a clown. And he was also sure that if his mother won, she would definitely cut off the head of the person who came up with such a plan. Parm believed that the Vanguard's equipment, with its incredible defense and powerful attack, was not just named to be killed by a mage like him. But when the boy saw the Archmage and the Aura expert, he realized that he would not be able to win this battle. Hadrian and Arisia easily destroyed the city. At that moment, Parm approached Adrian. Adrian didn't expect to see his former friend, thinking he would be hiding somewhere. Then the boy shouted that he had challenged Adrian Lawrence to a duel. Adrian believed that it was useless because with one shot he could destroy his opponent. So he struck first. Parm cried out that he was dying, but Adriana was only even more pleased. He had a feeling that he could easily pay off everyone at once, and the icing on the cake was to be the Parma family chest. The hero stood before the boy and told him why he decided to take revenge. His classmates tortured the boy mentally, so he couldn't take it anymore. But Adrian did not let Parma die peacefully, so he healed him again. He didn't want the boy to die from simple bloodshed. The battle between the Marquis of Lawrence and the Count of Parma lasted only 30 minutes. Meanwhile, Alfred was talking to Olivia about Marquis Lawrence. Both girls wanted to visit the boy and establish contact with him. They were informed that the war had already begun, so the girls decided to watch the hero. He was so good at his abilities. But as they got closer, they noticed that the mage was fighting in close combat. Alfred believed that the main reason why mages were so limited in modern battles was not at all in comparison to the Vanguard. The magical spell of short-range movement could increase the survival and mobility of mages who were less agile. Since the best way to eliminate the transference became impossible, this forced the magicians to use themselves on the battlefield. But the fact that Adrian was fighting on the battlefield suggested that he could dodge on his own without using teleportation magic. The girls couldn't believe that a battle of this type was possible. Olivia believed that even with the help of magical spells, it would be very difficult. Since this required a lot of combat experience, a trained body, and combat instincts, few people succeeded. Elfrida was surprised by Adrian's strength and energy. Seeing what she wanted, the girl decided to leave. Olivia watched the boys battle for a long time, as he displayed many unique abilities. And after that, I also decided to go back. Adrian felt that the girls were there and was very happy when they left. When the Viscount saw Adrian Lorenz in his office, he realized that all was lost. He shouted for the boy not to come near him. Adrian was only interested in why they hadn't signed a surrender pact. The guy wasn't going to kill anyone except the main culprit. Then the man agreed to surrender. At the moment when the Viscountcy of Parma disappeared as a result of the war between the Marquis of Lawrence and the four Viscouncies, it was already clear to everyone that the war was practically over. After that, the hero went to the Doherty window. At that time, the family mentors communicated with each other and discussed a plan of further action. They even considered a plan to hand over their children in exchange for life and freedom. And they also discussed the previous battle of the boy in the window. Viscountess Ranier knew with certainty that they had no chance of winning that war. Therefore, she suggested changing the plan method. At that time, all the armies of the Vixens arrived in the teleportation zone. They wanted to use the advantage of time to seize the building and take citizens hostage. If this operation is successful, the tide of the war will turn in an instant, so they wanted to do it at any cost. When the operation began, everyone rushed into battle. They set off for the celestial fortress of Marquis Lawrence, and the guy in turn waited for them with dignity. Then the commanders realized that the operation had been declassified. Adrian was able to teleport the entire army to some incomprehensible place. The hero ordered the rival army to immediately lay down its arms and surrender. He explained that in this way everyone could save their lives. But the rivals believed that the war would end if they managed to capture the Marquis of Lawrence. Adrian did not expect such a turn of events. Then the entire army attacked the boy. At that moment, Aricia came to the rescue. But Adrian was not frightened by such pressure. He was amused by the people's courage. Therefore, he decided not to give in and used a fiery explosion, and also used the aura from the avant-garde weapon around himself and the stronger shield of the Fifth Circle. The territorial war of the Marquis of Lorraine against the Four Windows ended in just half a day. The last push was a lone operation, and the Windows had no chance of winning, so the hero was able to quickly capture all the castles. A few days ago, after the end of the war, the hero met with his classmate Katrin, who was also insulted by everyone at the academy. He forced his enemies to apologize to her as well. The girl had a very hard time, and she even had to leave the academy because she started talking to Adrian, who everyone was making fun of. The hero also wanted to force Isabel Cascabel and Folo Brooks to apologize to them, but due to political reasons, he needed some time. Then Adrian shared with Catherine that she was his savior, so he offered her a job with him. Catherine became one of the maids. From that moment on, every day of the girl's life was simply wonderful, and she enjoyed every moment. Michael, meeting with the hero, expressed his admiration for the right thing he had done when he attracted Adrian to his side. After all, the disappearance of the three families who supported the second prince led to a successful conclusion for them. But in the process, one family that supported the crown prince disappeared. They discussed how Luke felt they shouldn't have gone so far towards the nobles who were on their side in order to get revenge. The second prince said that Earl Brooks and Mark Count Cascabel had committed the same sins as the window dressers, and therefore should also be destroyed, and also decided to close the eyes of Nadia, the guy this time. Michelle believed that this further narrowed the gap between them and the second prince's faction, but winning by a small margin wasn't what he wanted. The prince believed that if the country's forces were in decline due to civil war, then their enemies, the Kreutzen Empire, would once again show their unhealthy ambitions. It was for the sake of the complete victory of the crown prince that his betrayal was planned. Adrian wondered when he would have to start the operation again, but Michelle decided to wait a bit. Then Adrian shared that the second prince continued to court Aricia, and at this rate he could create a problem himself in the future. Michelle apologized to the boy for his brother's behavior. He believed that his brother's self-confidence had become excessive since he became an aura expert. To solve the problem, the prince suggested that Adrian hold a wedding ceremony. The event was moved to the castle of the county of Klein. Adrian considered Michelle's proposal. The hero understood that the wedding was the best solution in this situation, but it wasn't something he could decide so easily. Aricia and Adrian were fake lovers, not real lovers. Although the girl belonged to the heir of Archduke Lucas, the hero was sure that she would listen to his decision without any objections. But he didn't want to constantly use her for his own purposes, regardless of her feelings. In the garden, the hero saw Aricia, who, addressing him by name, came closer. The girl got a little carried away training with the knights and didn't notice how a little overdid it. At that moment, Catherine approached them. She reported that the second prince had said that he wanted to meet Lady Arisha. Adrian was shocked by what he heard because he did not expect such a turn of events. Arisha thought the second prince's gaze was like that of a pervert, so she didn't want to associate with him. At that moment, a knight approached them and greeted Arisha. Adrian wondered what brought him to visit him. Then, bowing his head and holding out flowers, the boy invited Arisha to dinner. This made Adrian very angry, and he announced that he would not remain silent if anyone else came with indecent proposals to his bride. And then he added that the knight should return and report this to his majesty. When Luke found out that Adrian had forbidden him from approaching his fiancée, he was very angry. The prince's aides tried to convince him that the boy had stopped and not provoked the Marquis of Lawrence anymore, because it could have ended badly. They believed that the girl could be obtained when the prince ascended the throne. Luke liked this idea. Also, he decided to take up the upbringing of Marquis Lawrence, but decided to postpone it. Now he has another compelling reason to take the throne. Since the territorial war was over, Adrian felt quite at ease. Jewelry, precious metals, and works of art, everything worth a penny, were taken as loot. The hero stole assets from his enemies and enjoyed their wealth. But the greatest gain of that war was the hilt of the heavenly sword. Anyone could tell that this was an extremely important thing. The sword was made of orichalcum, a rare mineral that was mined in organic quantities, about 500 grams per year, in the sacred lands of Everhill. He alone was worth more than the heavenly fortress. Since the hero was thinking about visiting the Holy Lands, he decided to study this topic. Adrian had been so busy with work lately that he could only spend 3 hours a day playing. Because of this, he barely reached level 205, so he decided to focus on raising it. First of all, the guy transferred all matters that did not require his personal presence to subordinates. For talent selection, Adrian put glasses on Arisha in reality and asked her to continue the work while he played. With the kind of momentum the hero had created, he was confident that he would raise his level quickly enough and be able to open the 8th circle. But suddenly, Arisha announced that they had discovered a talent of a very high level. That talent had divine power. A unique feature of the nature of holiness was also revealed. Arisha and the team went to meet the talent. When they arrived at their destination, they saw a lovely young girl in front of them. It was Everil Barnett with divine power. In Rondell, there was only one God and one religion. There they worshipped the creator of that world and the being known as the one God. And the teachings about that one God were called Sappalism. The center of Sappalism and the place where its leadership was located was called the Holy Lands of Everhill, and they were ruled by 3 holy kings, a holy and holy one. The holy king oversaw the general administration of the church. The saint watched over the army, including the holy knights themselves. And the saint watched over all the priests who performed divine miracles in the world. Meanwhile, Adrian invited a new talent to his place. Approaching the girl, he called her by name and felt that she truly had the nature of a saint. The girl worked part-time in a store due to family difficulties. She dreamed of becoming an administrative official. Adrian informed her that her talents were not suited to the position. After all, she had a talent for divine power, and her nature was so amazing that the girl could achieve the status of a saint. But it was impossible to become a saint with only potential. The holy knight, who received the blessing of the one god Sepia, was chosen from the holy royal family by blood. But the saint and saints were chosen only by God every 50 years, regardless of their status. Because when choosing a saint, you need to present yourself well, speaking on behalf of God. And since God sent such a talented person to the hero, he decided not to sit idly by. Having studied everything, Adrian learned that the election of the saint would be held very soon, and he was going to provide Miss Everil with his full support. The hero knew that 7 of the 10 saints had previously been ordinary people. Such achievements did not come in an instant, but required effort and willpower on the girl's part. Before choosing a saint, I will show her how to study etiquette, theology, and divine magic. But for now, Adrian was thinking of giving her an initial payment of 200 million and then a monthly salary of 500 million. The boy understood that if he could create the saint with his own hands, it would give him great power. But at that moment, Adrian realized that he had put the girl and Eric in the same room without thinking about the fact that their combination could end up being bad. If Eric, who had the talent and political skills, helps Everil, then can they create their own synergy effect? From that day on, the girl became a member of the family in His Grace's castle, and her parents could visit her at any time. Adrian ordered Eric to take care of the girl because it seemed to him that they had become good friends in such a short time, and the hero could not wait for the battle to begin. While Everil was getting used to the new environment, Adrian spent all his time improving his level in the game. But the pace of progress was very slow, and it annoyed the guy. And another problem the boy faced was that he began to meet other players more often. One of the players approached the guy and asked where the hero got such an eagle. Adrian shared that it was a wild animal that he had temporarily tamed using taming magic. At that moment, the hero thought about buying all the offered items that helped in battles. He learned that the global gaming market capitalization was 102 trillion. The boy was thinking about buying slaves and building a workshop, or using his last ticket to make a wish. And he was also concerned about the issue of leveling up, but so as not to clash with other players. And yet the hero managed to come up with such a way. Hadrian decided to monopolize the hunting grounds. The events moved to the Black Dragon Guild. Meetings were held in the administrative office. Guild members discussed the fact that their country had doubled the game access time limit, and all cash transactions were also blocked. Playing the game became more and more difficult every day. At that moment, the secretary entered the office and announced the arrival of a level 200 magician. He wanted to meet specifically with the guild leader because he had come to propose some kind of deal. The guild head initially refused the meeting, but the secretary convinced her otherwise. After all, the magician brought 10 decathlon hearts as a gift. In addition, he was dressed in the best hybrid gear available at level 200. Everyone was shocked by what they heard because they knew how much it all cost. Considering the potential of the equipment itself, the secretary was sure that he was dressed better than any user of the highest level. The guy entered the office and, sitting down in a chair, introduced himself as Manji. The guild leader saw that everything he was wearing was worth an insane amount of money. She wondered what brought him to them. Then the hero announced that he wanted to rent hunting grounds that were monopolized by the Black Dragon Guild. And the guy also wanted to cut off other players and rent land with the condition that only he could use it. And then he added that he would pay a lot of money for rent. Manji promised to give the guild 5 times the combined profit they could not get from those lands. He was only interested in the dungeon of Chimera Caltern. This alarmed the guild head, as more than 200 people used that dungeon every single day. And if each person earned at least 50,000 loot in those dungeons, then the total profit was more than 10 million loot. But this did not become a problem for the guy. And in turn, the guy wanted them to carefully block the entrance to other players. He shared his thoughts on the fact that he needed those lands to level up. Adrian loved to level up in a game where no one was around and considered it a pleasure for himself. At that very moment, the hero was ready to make an advance payment. The lease was for a month, and if the guy manages to raise his level, he will continue it. The guy convinced the guild head that he would rent the land to the maximum level. The guild members liked this proposal and agreed. Therefore, all guild members were immediately ordered to clear the Chimera dungeon as soon as possible. In that dungeon, the boy's experience increased much faster, and he has already managed to reach level 220. The guy was very happy about this achievement and assumed that he would be able to reach level 250 much faster. After the game, William informed Adrian that the selection in the Holy Land had to go faster than expected. They decided to hold the selection of the Saint and the Saint earlier than Adrian had planned. Everything was supposed to happen in the second half of next year. Adrian believed that this was a great advantage because the number of competitors could be reduced. Therefore, the guy ordered to prepare a winning strategy for Everil to single her out. Adrian wanted to turn the girl into a candidate for the role of Saint, represented by the Kingdom of Reinhard. 2 weeks ago, a donation was sent to the Archdiocese of the Reinhardt Kingdom on behalf of Everil, and the next day, the Archbishop of the Kingdom was to visit their territories, so Adrian and Everil were to meet them. And first of all, the guy wanted to win the Archbishop over to his side. If he manages to do this, the guy will be able to ask for support from the royal family. After listening to the plan, William believed that the boy had made the right decision. He also reported that among the candidates who will participate in the selection for the title of Saint were 3 of the most influential people: a girl named Grace, who was a high elf, candidate Evelyn Francis, or Eichsper, and lastly Judy Esther, a laywoman. After reviewing the applicants, Adrian realized that they were very outstanding. And even if you exclude their sponsors, they still outdid Everil. At the moment when the guy saw the list of candidates, he wanted to give up. But then he thought that he couldn't do without such rivals. He understood that it wouldn't be easy, but it wasn't impossible. The hero believed in the potential that his candidate had. That day, the boy's work was already finished and he wanted to go back to the game. But William decided to clarify something with the guy. He was interested in what the hero had sacrificed to the Archbishop. Because the Archbishop of the Kingdom of Reinhardt was not the kind of person who would go anywhere for money. But Adrian only smiled in response. Meanwhile, Olivia learned that the Marquis Adrian Lawrence was Everil Barnett's sponsor, and also that he made a donation of as much as 10 trillion. The Archbishop arrived at the palace. He was sure that Everil would become the new saint. The hero managed to win Archbishop Fred over to his side. Adrian told Freddie that Judy Esther had offered to create an alliance for the duration of the selection. The offer came from her sponsor, the Dukedom of Riverdale, not from Mrs. Judy herself. Freddie thought Esther was a good candidate and therefore recommended that they consider their offer. Adrian believed that first he needed to increase the chances of Miss Evelyn being chosen, and only then would he compete with Miss Esther. Therefore, the hero only had to involve the Reinhardt royal family. With this proposal, he went to Prince Luke, and he had no reason to refuse. He even promised to talk to his father. When the hero was about to leave, Luke suddenly told him something. The prince said that Count Otis's daughter Mark and Duke Ekis were missing, and because of this, there was a decline on the side of the crown prince. Adrian immediately began to compare the facts. The hero thought that the count was on the prince's side, so the hero pretended that it was great news. After that, Adrian met with Michelle. The crown prince immediately understood from the hero's face that he already knew about the situation that had occurred. Margrave Otis and Count Eckers were maternal cousins, and so they were very close, and as a bonus, their political views were quite similar. Count Akers was madly in love with Miss Michelle as if she were his own daughter, and he himself volunteered to protect her when he heard that she was going on vacation alone. And the whole problem was that the final stop of their arrival was in the Republic of Prius. Michelle Otis was an ardent supporter of Archduke Lucas, and she was seriously engaged in searching for his fate. But since everyone had heard that fate had been found in the Republic of Prius, the girl could not accept this fact and went there in search of it. Adrian assumed that it was his fault. Michelle requested the extradition of 2 people through official diplomatic lines and covertly deployed special forces in conjunction with the National Intelligence Service. Adrian understood that if the matter resolved itself, that would be the best-case scenario, but the probability of that was very low. Diplomatic friction was inevitable, but Michelle was willing to take a big loss for the sake of those 2, and in that case, Adrian won't be able to help him. So I decided to go there myself because I was ideally suited to finding them both. The boy wanted to sneak in secretly, hiding his identity, but asked the prince to help him hide himself as best he could. The prince agreed to help the hero and promised to send the coordinates of the place where they were last seen. This was considered unpredictable and illegal immigration. Meanwhile, when Greg and Michelle arrived at the Prius window, they were immediately met by a large army. The count tried to explain that they were simple tourists and did not carry any danger or hostile intentions towards their country. In a whisper, the count told Michelle to run 30 meters away and use the teleportation spell there, and he wants the girl not to worry because he will be able to escape. When the count shouted, the girl started running with all her might. But at that moment, the man saw someone behind him. Meanwhile, the Icarus Sky Fortress was using invisibility magic. Aricia reported that the count and Michelle had been spotted. Thus, they teleported to their destination. Adrian saw that the Prius Vanguard and the other forces were confronting each other and helping them escape. Wearing a mask, he decided to join the battle. At that moment, the guy used a fiery explosion. With his help, Prius's army was neutralized. Adrian informed the Count and Michelle that they had come to save them, and the guy also restored their health. The hero assumed that Michelle recognized him. The girl tried to persuade her uncle to let them return, but one of the knights stopped Michelle and said that they had to ask her something. They wondered if the girl had received her share of Lucas's fortune. The girl replied that judging by the form, the fortune was indeed plausible, but after a quick inspection, its content turned out to be more inferior than she had expected. The commander suggested that the fate was a fake created by the real discoverer. At that moment, Adrian decided he needed to keep his mouth shut. Michelle continued to talk about what she had received online, and I thought that fate was hidden from the virtual world, which was not reality. When she remotely accessed Louis Fairmont's terminal, she was able to learn that he frequently accessed a certain domain, so she decided that this was an entrance to fate. Adrian, listening attentively to the girl, realized that she was so smart that she could really find her destiny before him. After that, one of the knights reported that their commander had invited the Count and Michelle to his place. The events have moved to the northern glacier of the Prius Republic. The commander was Israel Oska, the Archmage of the Seventh Circle. He expressed his curiosity about the rumor that the northern lights on the glaciers of the Prius Republic were in the form of a rainbow. The guy approached his guests and greeted them. Michelle thanked him for saving them, and when he returned to Adrian and Aricia, he immediately recognized them and called them by name. Therefore, they were forced to take off their masks. The Count did not understand why the people from the Second Prince's side were there. Israel recognized Lawrence purely intuitively. Hearing their voices, he immediately decided that they were Adrian and Aricia. The man said that he would never want to become enemies with the Marquis Lawrence. And then I asked Michelle if she had copied the research materials she had access to. Israel asked the girl to share some of the research materials with him, and they would compensate them for it. But fate was in a form that could only be achieved step by step, so the girl was unable to obtain it. Israel also wanted materials to manufacture equipment for its vanguard troops. He believed that this data was very important. Adrian understood that Michelle's actions could provoke war. The democratization of the Prius Republic was accomplished in a strange way. The royal family advocated the creation of a republic. The late king was a great man, but there was something he missed. He created a democratic country for the people. But this democracy was not achieved by the people themselves, but rather was a unilateral democratization. The current president, Quattro Fairmont, has filled a gap in public perception that has not yet been fully formed. As a result, the country became more dictatorship-like than feudal countries. Israel reported that the future that His Majesty, the last king, imagined was not like that at all. Therefore, he decided to correct his mistake as the heir to the royal family. It seemed to Adrian that they wanted to do something more than the current regime. The guy suggested that Israel make a deal with him instead of Michelle. He considered this a breakthrough to a new business partner. Adrian reported that he already had drawings of the power equipment. Israel considered the boy to be truly a man who went beyond common sense. The performance was in no way inferior to the other power equipment their kingdom produced. When Adrian handed over the PowerLink device, the man was surprised by its design. His performance was important, but his appearance also played a big role. The man had no reason to doubt because the thing was truly of excellent quality. But he couldn't understand why Marquis Lawrence wanted to help him reveal his secrets. As it turned out, Adrian simply liked their people. But the conversation was interrupted by the Count, who said that it was illegal to trade technology without the royal family's permission. But Adrian decided that no one would find out about it if everyone present kept their mouths shut. Michelle and the Count agreed to the conditions. The events moved to the palace of the first prince. Adrian and Aricia brought the Count and Michelle to him. Michael understood that the Prius Republic was the same place where the Lord of Fate had appeared, and war could begin at any moment. The prince could not accept the fact that while the whole world was in tension over the affairs of the throne, his uncle and niece had visited the most dangerous zone and even returned after surviving an attack. He warned them to behave properly in the future. But at that moment, the Count wondered why Aricia and Adrian were also present there, since they were on the side of the second prince. Then Michelle announced that they were on their side. This meant that they were putting on a show, pretending to be on the side of the second prince. Meanwhile, Adrian pondered that Michelle Otis's existence was a bit problematic for him, since she knew about the false destiny. At that moment, one of the knights reached the prince and said that he had watched the news. The news reported that the Brigham Empire had declared war on the Prius Republic. Meanwhile, the Republic of Prius harshly criticized the one who unleashed the war, and also appealed to society and neighboring countries to recognize the legitimacy of ownership of the fortune that was under the management and ownership of Louis Fairmont. The conflicts surrounding the fate of Archduke Lucas only grew. Adrian believed that the chances of winning were 6-4. 6 will be in the Brigham Empire. The hero believed that although they had invaded the Prius Republic, they would have problems crossing the ocean and penetrating open terrain. Thus, the defensive position of the Republic of Prius is bound to have some advantages, and at this point, the Reinhardt Kingdom could do nothing in that war. As a bonus, the best scenario would be one where the Revolutionary Army, which had experience at the time, would seize the opportunity and eliminate the current corrupt regime. The guy also shared that to save the Count and Michelle, they borrowed the forces of the Revolutionary Army of the Prius Republic. The hero wanted to take over the local information network and get in touch with them. After all, he and the leader of the Revolutionary Army were mutually subscribed to each other on social networks. Michelle Graff and Michelle that in any case they should keep their mouths shut about Marquis Lawrence and Countess Aricia. After all, the two of them were their main trump cards in the upcoming battle for the throne. Therefore, they were forbidden to leave the prince's palace. The war between the Brigham Empire and the Prius Republic quickly escalated. Simultaneously with the declaration of war, the expeditionary forces of the Brigham Empire deployed with terrifying speed, as if they were just waiting for an opportunity to surround the Prius Republic. Prius responded by taking advantage of their home field advantage and forming a strong defensive line. Although a direct collision has not yet occurred, experts predicted that it could happen soon. Meanwhile, Adrian was invited to a special project for the 10th anniversary of the episode The Mage and the Knight. A few days before, Eric informed the hero that Avril lacked recognition compared to the other candidates for the selection of saints. Therefore, he decided to send Andrea and Lawrence to television. The theme of the program was a comparison of magicians and knights. But many experts conducted an assessment and concluded that this topic was quite disadvantageous for the Marquis, who was a magician. Therefore, Adrian wanted to get rid of this superstition about magicians. After that, the host invited a knight whom Adrian was supposed to compete with. It was Count Felix, the new proud aura expert of the Lucia Kingdom. At that moment, it seemed to the hero that the knight reminded him of someone. Felix reported that that day he decided to show the Marquis that reality was not as simple as he had thought. Then the hero realized that the man reminded him of Cedric. That nervous battle was heated from the very beginning. They went to an island located in the middle of a beautiful lake where the sparring was to take place. It was a place called Duel Island. That day, experts were specially invited to observe the sparring and draw conclusions. Knights armed themselves with magical equipment, while mages fought with their bare hands. But Felix was ready to fight even in his usual gear. When the countdown began, the battle began and Felix attacked the hero. But at some point, it turned out that the aura expert was the loser. After the game ended, Adrian ordered Everil to heal his opponent. When the girl came up and the healing began, everyone was shocked by the energy that was raging in the hall. As everyone began to ask about the girl, Adrian reported that she was a priestess of the bishop level, but recorded as a vassal of their marquis. And he also reported that Miss Avril planned to participate in the selection of saints. Adrian was delighted that his plan had worked and everyone had found out about Avril. Although she showed so much for a short time, she attracted a lot of attention, and Adrian realized that Eric was a very worthy employee. Meanwhile, Avril followed Sir Adrian's words and worked hard to prepare for the saints' competition. But she was worried about whether she would really be able to handle such a big task. After all, until recently, the heroine was simply working part-time in a store. One day, the girl decided to go home to visit her parents. Entering the apartment, she saw many different people, and one person who was present made the girl very angry. Her uncle and the other guests mocked Avril. The heroine did not understand why their relatives had come to visit them so suddenly, because they usually behaved as if they were strangers. That he gathered the whole family to set up a joint business. He extended his business plan and offered to nominate Avril as a candidate for sainthood for their family. The father and mother stood up for the girl. They understood that the relatives wanted to make money off their daughter. A fight broke out over this as the brothers tried to win them over to their side. Previously, there had been a conflict between them over a deposit taken by the father's brothers, and after they ran away, he had to pay the entire amount himself. Avril asked the guests to leave. After all, she did not want to contact them in any way and intended to return to the relationship between them that existed before. At that moment, Adrian entered the room and asked about the cause of the conflict. The knights who were present with Avril greeted the Lord with low bows. Adrian approached the girl's relatives and said that he had the right to do whatever he wanted with them. Using his strength, he lifted one of the men into the air and threw him to the ground. And the guy did the same with the others. Seeing this, their wives fell to the ground and asked the boy for forgiveness. Then Adrian wondered what right they had to harm one of his people. The guy believed that this was a declaration of war on their part against him, and then he ordered the knights to arrest them. Adrian decided to force his relatives to pay the debt they owed to Miss Evril's family. Due to forced labor, they had to compensate for moral damage with interest. The hero also suggested that the girl's parents move with her to his castle. The parents agreed to the boy's proposal. Then the girl realized that she would do everything for that circle to somehow help Sir Adrian. But she understood that she would cause him unnecessary problems if she expressed her interest in him despite the fact that he had a bride. But she had every right to help him as an assistant. Events moved to the Empire of Brigham, the Duchy of Francis. One of the 4 great dukes of the Brigham Empire, Duke Francis, was reviewing the news about Avril. He understood that the girl had a high chance of winning the Saints contest, and he didn't like that at all. Therefore, he ordered his knight Gregor to get rid of his rivals. Meanwhile, Adrian Lawrence received a message from the Duchess of Riverdale. She warned the boy that Duke Francis was doing some strange things and asked the boy to be careful. This moment in the emergency waiting room at Lawrence Castle, the knights shared their achievements with the Marquise's team. The guys believed that their security system was almost perfect, and only someone at the level of an aura expert could try to harm them. The Lord strictly calculated their working hours and monitored the condition of the knights. During the conversation, they addressed one of them, named Sir Damien, who was sitting with his head bowed. When one of them approached and touched him, he saw that the boy's eyes were not the same as usual. But a few minutes later, the guy said he was preparing for a special operation, getting into character. They were going to go to Hadrian's castle, and their target was Avril, not the Lord. And before heading to the castle, one of the knights watched Marquis Lawrence from afar. But their conversation was interrupted when a report came in about intruders in the North Wing. The intruders were 5 expert-level Asanas who were armed with power daggers. The knight's task was to maintain the reserve team in the North Wing, as well as prevent the opponents from escaping. Their target was the farthest room of the North Building next to the Lord's office. When Damien and Farman ran into the room, they saw Avril and 2 guards. They didn't want to let the knights get any closer. After all, no one in that castle had the right to approach the girl, except for those appointed by the Lord personally. Then one of the knights took the sword of Aura to help. The guards realized that these were not real knights, but assassins sent by the enemy. At this moment, the girl used her strength to repel the attack against the guards. The knights realized that information about their operation had been leaked. At that moment, Adrian entered the room. He remembered that he had recently caught sight of one of the boys in the crowd. The hero immediately recognized Gregory Hayden, and the other was named Augustus Knox. After consulting among themselves, the boys wanted to attack Lorenz. Therefore, they transformed into their true images. Adrian was impressed by Blue Moon's reincarnation, but thought it was 8th grade syndrome. The Blue Moon was a legendary organization involved in many mystical and bloody tales. Everyone was only speculating about this organization because no one knew if it was real or where it was located. It was because of their mysterious and bad reputation that the members of the Blue Moon often appeared as thieves in Rondel's tales, like witches on Earth. Even Adrian thought it was all a fabrication made up by parents to scare their children. He himself did not believe that the organization really existed. The hero could not understand how the boys from the Blue Moon were connected to the Duchy of Francis. After exchanging phrases, the guys decided to attack Adrian. With their power, they summoned the spirit. But Adrian, aiming his weapon at him, struck first. Using a power attack, he neutralized his opponent. Adrian reported that he was not only an aura expert, but also a beast tamer. This made one of the guys very angry, and he decided to launch a mental attack. But it didn't hurt Adrian at all. Then the guy decided to use his spiritual skill and attack the hero again. But again, nothing worked for him, and he fell to the ground helplessly. Since the abilities of the Owner of Fate were transferred from virtuality to reality, such attacks had no effect on Adrian. At that moment, the guys realized that it would be very difficult for them to fight such a magician. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't determine his identity, even when he was standing right in front of them. Georg understood that the person in front of him was not easy. He considered him a real monster. Adrian decided that just killing them and getting rid of them would be really quick, so he decided to pull a few tricks, and it worked even better than he expected. And then, coming closer, the hero healed one of the boys. Having regained their strength, the boy announced that he had no desire to fight them, and I wanted to meet their leader. After that, Adrian let them go. On November 29, 2019, an announcement was sent out to the entire world from the Holy Lands of Everhill. 15 female and 11 male candidates were elected to the position of saints. The competition to select the 2 leaders has begun. The selection was supposed to last about a month. The content of the selection itself was distributed through broadcasts and online. By that time, Adrian had not yet received a response from the Blue Moon. When the hero simply walked on the Holy Land of Everhill, everyone looked only at him. They discussed his abilities and the fact that the guy should not be underestimated. The king congratulated and thanked everyone who participated in the selection opening ceremony. He announced that 15 female and 11 male candidates had been selected for the role of saints. The topic of the first round was tactics based on monster subjugation. There must be 5 people in the group, including the challenger, 2 swordsmen, an aura expert, and 2 third-circle magicians. After announcing the main information, Adrian approached the king and greeted him. Next to the king was the main person on whom Everil had to pay all her attention, Sharon Sylvester, the current celebrant. Although she looked quite young, this youth was preserved thanks to her position. Adrian introduced Miss Averill, whom he sponsored. Looking at the girl, the saint realized that the guy had chosen the right candidate. Adrian was pleased that he had managed to impress Sharon. Not far from him, he saw Duke Francis and decided to approach him. Smiling, the hero introduced himself by name and extended his hand. In a whisper, he said that he had received a gift from the Duke. The guy tried to get the man to talk, but he didn't want to talk to him at all. Next to the Duke, Adrian noticed their candidate for sainthood, Evelyn Francis. He asked her to be gentle with Miss Everill. And then he added that he intended to meet Sir Gregor and Sir Augustus again. This conversation made the Duke very angry. Seeing that this conversation was unpleasant for Francis, Adrian decided to move away from him with a smile on his face. At that moment, the Duchess of Riverdale approached the hero. Olivia was very happy to meet the guy. She introduced her candidate by calling her Judy Esther. The girl had divine power of a very high level. Adrian and Olivia discussed the terms of the Saint contest and shared their thoughts on it. Olivia said that their team did not have a mage with real combat experience. Adrian offered to lend one of his men. He promised to find 2 third-circle battle mages with excellent skills and good character and send them to her. After that, Adrian wondered if the magic swordsman would count as one person in that tactical competition. The topic of the first round was tactics for subduing monsters. Holy men and women were also registered as mercenaries and led squads of 4 to defeat them. Cameras monitored everything the entire time, and what happened at the selection was broadcast online. A separate channel was dedicated to each candidate. Even strangers wanted to help Everil achieve her goal. Therefore, they brought the prey to the girl and wanted her to pass it off as her own. When the elves first appeared on the broadcast, they attracted a lot of attention with their chic appearance. But due to their characteristic difficulty, they only focused on the tasks and performed them perfectly. turning their broadcasts into a kind of documentary. It didn't matter how enjoyable they were to watch. If their content was boring, people got bored too. So when the participants started warming up, the audience started moving. And unlike the channels of other candidates, the channel Every All, which kept entertaining moments like youth melodramas, began to arouse great interest. And the candidates for the role of saints from high-ranking aristocratic families were thieves. So public opinion put increasing pressure on Everall. After all, the girl was completely different and treated everyone equally well, regardless of status. Therefore, all the people sincerely wished that Miss Everall would become a saint. Thus, people collected monster corpses for the girl, and she, in turn, believed that she had to give it her all 100%. Meanwhile, Adrian met with the Archbishop. The boy handed the man the orichalcum uterus, which had divine power inside. This is a relic that was about 20,000 years old. Then the boy said that with the help of outstanding craftsmanship, they could repair the relic. And this was possible because only part of the sacred magical chain from the mythical era was destroyed. The Archbishop decided to help the boy restore such a thing. The royal family, as well as the imperial family of each country, owned at least one such relic. Therefore, the Archbishop believed that there were many different ways to advertise such antiques. Adrian did everything to make Everall a saint. He used every available means at his disposal to ensure that their efforts were not in vain. A few days after that, Adrian met with craftsman Kobe Ventry. The man was very happy to meet Adrian Lawrence. The boy held out the object he wanted to restore. Kobe immediately recognized it as a sword hilt and one with ancient magical magic. The man had previously seen a similar object deep inside the church, and in comparison to them, the handle was in almost pristine condition. And Kobe also said that it was a holy sword, and at that time there were only 3 of them in the church. In general, there were only 6 holy swords in the world, and the one the hero had was the 7th. When the sword was in full condition, a blade of divine light emerged from the heliotrope, and if the literature is to be believed, that type of blade could be compared to an aura sword, which was much more effective against demons. And also this universal item could transform all types of energy into a blade. Then Adrian realized that with the help of this sword, he had won the lottery. To repair it, the man will need heliotrope and a few new tools. Adrian paid the man a large sum to repair the sword. Kobe didn't object because the value of that item was really great. He asked to be given a week to repair the relic for the sake of his honor as an engineer. Adrian believed that if he could form an aura-level blade using mana, he would be able to step up and play the role of a magical swordsman, and maybe also get its compatibility with a magic staff and use copies. But suddenly Adrian was informed that Miss Everall had been kidnapped. The events moved to the Dragonlands and the border of the Croizon Empire. The kidnappers were ordered to get rid of the heroine, but for some reason their attacks had no effect on her. At that moment, one of Phoenix's men appeared next to the kidnapped girl. Gregory informed Adrian that they had managed to find those responsible for the kidnapping of Miss Everall. He also wanted to know who was involved in the girl's kidnapping, since they had only caught the middlemen. But Adrian couldn't understand why Gregory was helping him. Then the boy reported that he had received an order from their leader. It was said that Miss Everall would be in danger, so they were ordered to rescue her as compensation. The leader also said that the Duchy of Francis was no longer of value to them, and also ordered them to move to the base. In a blue moon, the leader did not interfere much in the affairs of the boys, except for truly necessary orders. Almost all the time they acted autonomously, but since the assassination attempt on Mrs. Evelyn that time, instructions have been issued to all members of the Blue Moon, and they were forbidden to harm Adrian Lucas. After everything the hero heard, he thanked them for saving the girl and decided to forget about what had happened between them before. The leader of the Blue Moon was expecting Adrian's visit, and his people came so that the boy could visit them at any time. But the hero suggested that it could be a trap because they invited him to their place so easily. But looking at their faces, he realized that this was not the case. Gregory handed the guy the password and the terminal they used once in a blue moon. It was connected to Augustus and Gregory's terminal, so Adrian could call them at any time. Since the unprecedented case of the abduction of a saint during the selection was broadcast live the entire time, the whole world was on its toes. But the boy still couldn't understand why the leader of the Blue Moon Talk had changed his attitude towards him. Adrian decided to meet the saint. The girl reported that the echelons of their church called the boy a rule breaker. Because of this, a fight broke out between them. Because the candidate in the festival was kidnapped by people who broke into the middle of the competition, and the church didn't even want to look for her until the hero himself found her. The guy assumed that this was the end of his good image, which he had held on to for so long in front of the saint. The woman told him that there was a suspicion within the council that the incident had been planned by the guy, but she was convinced that there was not a drop of lie in his words. After that, the holiday brought together all the candidates' sponsors for a meeting. The reason for this gathering was the desire to reveal the whole truth about the kidnapping that had taken place the other day. Ash presented the mirror of truth, which reflected all truth. With the help of that mirror, the woman confirmed that the kidnapping was not the initiative of Miss Avril Barnett and Marquis Adrian Lawrence, so she wanted everyone to go to the mirror and prove their innocence to it. At that moment, Adrian entered the hall with his knights. He reported that the culprit who tried to harm the girl was a grandmaster, so he came to help figure it out. The saint told everyone to approach the mirror one by one. The Elysian Nation Union Queen of Elfheim and Claudia Helwyn decided to go first. Claudia Helwyn said she had nothing to do with the kidnapping of the saint candidates. Grace wasn't involved in this either. Their innocence was proven. Everyone who approached the mirror was not involved in the attack. Only two remained, Francis and his candidate. They approached the mirror and reported that they had nothing to do with the kidnapping. And after them, Prime Minister Trino Oust of the Prius Republic and the candidate for the Miss Universe pageant, Miel Oust, were supposed to approach the mirror, but they refused to testify. Therefore, the holiday ordered that from that time on, they would be under arrest on suspicion of kidnapping Avril, a little shocked that the Republic of Prius was to blame, because he thought otherwise. However, on the other hand, he suggested that it was a windfall. The attempted murder right during the selection of the saints was undoubtedly an act of apostasy. The hero understood that this would not only be an unexpected gift for the Brigham Empire, which was at war with the Prius Republic, but would also present a good opportunity for the Revolutionary Army. The events of Avril puzzled Andrian, the church leadership, and even the saint, and the people reacted surprisingly mildly. And, unlike such a bland finale, thanks to an incident, the course of the first competition for the selection of the saint changed a little. Among the candidates who remained the strongest were considered the top 5, which included the granddaughter of the Elf Queen, Grace Haven, the mistress of the nature of Saint Everil, Esther, with whom they were in alliance, that Duke Francis's daughter Evelyn, and also the princess of the kingdom of Roberto from the powerful nation of the northern continent of Tryon. After the humiliating elimination of the Republic candidate Prius, they began to actively support the princess, claiming that they would support the friendly continent of Triton. After all the events that had taken place, the hero decided to go into the game with Aricia to level up. After the kidnapping incident, Everly's popularity continued to grow, and it only served them well, and Adrian officially released the development of the Fencer's power equipment. There were no problems on the territory, and things were also going well in the Magic Tower. For the first time in a long time, he was finally able to relax and get the most out of each day he lived. After some time, Adrian met with the leader of the Blue Moon, George Vass. The man chose the best drinks for Adrian and Aricia. Adrian felt that the man was positive and also had 4 high-level talents. Besides, although they had only recently met, George treated him very well. George ordered his assistants to leave the room. He believed he didn't need protection at that moment. Adrian wondered what his true identity was. The system reported that the man was starting to get nervous. Falling to the ground, George bowed his head and expressed his delight at meeting the Marquis. Adrian was shocked by what had happened. George was related to Duke Lucas, as he was the previous leader of the Blue Moon. Adrian understood perfectly well that the meeting was not intended to simply establish a partnership between them. Pulling out a high-production terminal, George decided to explain everything. Chester emerged from it. He reported that the Blue Moon was supposed to be part of the Destiny quest and a reward for completing Level 8. But the hero unexpectedly made contact earlier than planned. 5 years ago, as soon as he entered the final path to receiving his destiny, various units resumed their activities, including Blue Moon. George was the assistant and manager of Blue Moon. The hero assumed that if the Blue Moon was a Level 8 reward, then there was no point in interacting with them afterwards. Chester said that he couldn't yet recognize Adrian as the master of the Blue Moon, but he decided that he wouldn't stop him from forming a friendly relationship for now. Everything didn't go as planned, once again due to Chester's negligence. Adrian was delighted to be dealing with Servas. Chester reported that the Blue Moon consisted of 8 special Aura Masters and Archmages, and many other subordinates. And the hotel they were in at that moment also belonged to the Blue Moon. The financial power of the business holdings was approximately 100 trillion, and the military power surpassed most dukes. Sometime after that, Adrian met with the craftsman. Meanwhile, the first round of the selection of saints was coming to an end, and Kobe, the chief engineer of the land, the priest, came to the penthouse of the hotel in which the hero was staying. The man apologized for taking more time to restore the item than he had asked. He reported that more energy of any kind, such as aura, mana, and divine power, needed to be put into the handle. When Adrian decided to test the weapon, he was shocked by its power. At that moment, Hobie saw blood on the guy's jacket. The hero was injured while conducting a weapons experiment. Suddenly, Adrian fell to the ground and began to bleed. but one of his subordinates approached them and used the elixir to restore them. Adrian realized that using such a powerful sword required serious training. The system informed the hero to give the holy sword a name. Adrian decided to name the sword Excalibur. The hero was very pleased with this find because it included the ability to strike at the level of an aura blade. Delighted with such a precious object, the boy began to think about how to use it to his advantage in the battle with Everil. Meanwhile, the first round of the qualifying competition has passed. Everil took second place in the tactical challenge and first in the audience rating. Therefore, in the overall report, the girl was in first place. Princess Xia Lin even beat Lady Francis and rose to fourth place. Adrian understood that the girl was a dark horse in that game. The guy praised Everil for her beautiful work and gave her flowers. The heroine really wanted to live up to all of her lord's expectations. In that competition, candidates were selected from which God himself would choose. The hero's conversation with Everil was interrupted by Assistant Xia Lin and announced that the girl wanted to meet him. Adrian was confused by this proposal. The great name of Marquis Lawrence spread beyond the Central Sea and was even heard on the continent of Triton. It was a great honor for the princess to meet him in person. Therefore, Adrian could not refuse the meeting and agreed to the offer. Although this was their first meeting, the girl seemed very intelligent and good-natured to the hero. Along with Everil and Esther, Princess Xia Lin was one of the candidates who undoubtedly used her sacred magic for other people. But Adrian liked the fact that the girl decided to contact him herself. Xia Lin introduced the hero to her sponsor named Garcia Valen, who was a representative of the State Council of the Republic of Prius. The boy didn't really like the fact that the man had anything to do with the Republic because he had his own scores with them. He decided to ask why such an important person wanted to meet with him, but the man decided not to rush things and suggested they chat over dinner. When Adrian entered the hall, he saw a gorgeously laid table. The first thing that caught his eye was a rice dish, as well as stewed fish and dishes wrapped in lettuce leaves. And the main dish was kalbithan, which the hero adored. The princess's clothing bore a striking resemblance to the Han side of the Kori dynasty, and this was very close. He tasted the cuisine of the kingdom of Roberto and found it to be a perfect match for his preferences. Valen decided to get down to business. He reported that very terrible events were taking place in their republic. For some time now, they had been alarmed by the actions of an anti-government group calling itself the Revolutionary Army. And to their surprise, the anti-government group was able to make its own equipment for the vanguard. However, they discovered that this equipment had many similarities to the core of a new spellcaster that was being produced at the time in Lawrence's magic tower. The hero assumed that the man thought his power equipment was fake. Adrian didn't know how the Revolutionary Army's equipment was similar to the magic tower's equipment, but he was sure they were different. So the man suggested they file a claim that they stole Marquis Lawrence's technology. Adrian realized that the man wanted him to accuse the Revolutionary Army of stealing his technology, but the boy could not understand what his benefit from that deal was. Valen offered to pay for it on behalf of the Republican Army. Adrian wondered whether it would be right to strike such a blow at the Revolutionary Army for the sake of the Prius Republic. He asked the princess what she thought, but she decided not to interfere in such a conversation. In the end, the girl did not express her personal opinion, although she mentioned her position as a representative of the country, siding with the Republic. Valen continued to persuade the guy because he could earn more than 50 trillion from this for a simple nod of his head. But Adrian decided to refuse. This made Valen very angry, but the boy quickly calmed him down and told him not to forget that they were on the continent of Desteron. At this point, the Brigham Empire and the Prius Republic were at war. Therefore, the hero did not want to participate in something that could lead to the defeat of the Brigham Empire. Hadrian had no reason to put the Empire at a disadvantage in that conflict. After all, he understood that in the long term, a conflict with the Brigham Empire would bring great losses. The guy believed that the government should have solved its internal problems on its own. Valen felt very angry, so he ran out of the room without even saying goodbye. And Adrian decided to continue the delicious meal. After the meeting, the guy posted on his social media page about the incident that occurred. Even the king felt confused when he saw this information. He believed that if they ignored this situation, Marquis Lawrence would create something similar again. But the high-ranking aristocrats only met in words to develop appropriate measures, and in reality, they arranged a court hearing. The guy's post quickly spread around the world and caused a scandal not only in the Republic of Prius, but also in the Kingdom of Reinhardt, which is why the hero was summoned there. Otis suggested simply ignoring what happened. But the Marquis of Triton was very indignant at what had happened. But Arisha interrupted their conversation and asked, "What was Marquis Lawrence wrong about?" Triton reported that the boy had frivolously revealed the secret of the Republic's power to the whole world. Arisha believed that the blame for the fact that it had come to light and created problems should have been placed on the authorities, not on Hadrian. The king agreed with the girl's words. But Trayton tried to prove that no matter how immoral the deal was, its details could not be disclosed and put the partner in an awkward position. The fourth child in the kingdom, the first daughter, and third in line to the throne, Princess Diana wondered what Adrian believed, since he behaved so calmly while discussing the consequences. The hero replied that he had taken precautions for such an eventuality. Since they were talking about an uninteresting topic, the boy recorded their conversation. After hearing the conversation, Michelle believed that if he posted it online, the Brigham Empire would have no choice but to intervene. After all, those who valued their reputation would be obliged to stand up for someone who made personal sacrifices for them. That is why Adrian sided with the Brigham Empire and remembered the continent as Defter. Then this will become a problem for the Kingdom of Reinhard and the Republic of Prius, and the issue of the Brigham Empire will also be raised. A video of the conversation with the representative of the State Council Garcia was posted after the meeting to develop appropriate measures ended. As expected, when the video was posted, not only the allies of the Reinhard Kingdom issued a statement in their support. The Prius Republic declared its surrender and a decision was made to lift economic sanctions against the Kingdom of Reinhardt. The princess was impressed by the hero's intelligence and believed that he would be the perfect match for her. But he already had a bride. Meanwhile, her servants received a message from the Sacred Land, however, that the second round of selection would be held simultaneously with 2 participants. The girl understood that a competitive environment would be created in that round. It was said that she would be taking part with Everil Barnett, who was sponsored by Marquis Lawrence. Preparations were underway for the second round of selection. Unlike the first competition, which took over a month to complete, the second will be held in an open-air concert square built on sacred land. Each candidate for sainthood will be given 2 hours to demonstrate their abilities in front of the camera. The princess approached Adrian and his candidate and greeted them. They were also a joy and cooperation with the girl. Complimenting the girl, the hero said that she looked like she was about to dance. Since he had long been interested in the art of Triton's magic, he was eagerly awaiting the start of the round. The princess believed that Miss Evelyn was not a worthy competitor in this round. After all, before she was just a human and did not possess any talents except divine power. He quickly announced that the competition would take place in 3 minutes, and everyone had to get ready. As she went on stage, the princess thought that she should become a saint to support her country. Entering the square, she began her dance and used the power of the white tiger. Adrian carefully followed the girl's movements. He believed that she was at the level of the 4th circle, but with her sophistication, the girl was able to compete with any archmage. The hero was sure that if everything continued in the same spirit, Princess Xialin would take a high place in the second round of selection. When it was Everil's turn, Adrian decided to recreate the girl's workplace where she used to work. The audience didn't understand what the store had to do with the Saints competition. Then the guy explained that anyone could come up and buy something from a seller who was a candidate for the holiday. With everyone who approached Everil, the girl smiled sweetly and helped the buyer with the goods. This clearly showed how close she was to the people despite her sacred status. This was exactly the reaction Adrian was counting on. The emphasis was on showing her as some kind of acquaintance, as if she were no different from an ordinary viewer. And instead of dragging in fictional talents and performances, the goal was to humorously highlight Everil's unique strengths. The princess understood the intention of Adrian's team, and she liked it. At that moment, Adrian said that every performance needed a beginning, development, and climax. Suddenly, with a snap of his fingers, the hero blew up the store. Countess Klein appeared before them in a rather unusual appearance. She was a voracious demoness and aura expert who required 3 meals a day, plus snacks. Adrian reported that it was part of the performance. Everil the visitors immediately went to the emergency exit. And in the meantime, she will deal with the thief. When the Countess wanted to attack the girl, she used an aura blade. Everil and Arisha had this fight, so everything was under control. The girl performed each movement according to a certain pattern, and thus with the help of her abilities and sword, she was able to defeat the thief. Their supermarket almost fell into the clutches of snack demon Everil Barnett, but the judges didn't like it. And the Saints Selection Committee withdrew points for the second round because her performance could not be fully credited to her. The points were taken more than Adrian expected, but the audience liked it. Therefore, the girl was in first place in the audience rating. The long process of selecting a saint was finally coming to an end. However, the selection of the saint was expected to end in the 3rd round, but it was postponed due to an unexpected incident. The Prius Republic has won a major military victory over the Brigham Empire. Therefore, the Brigham Empire wanted to do everything possible to wipe out the Prius Republic of the Earth merger, The best solution for the Republic in that war would be to use the advantage of the homeland. This great victory of the Prius Republic hit the pride of the Brigham Empire hard. The Brigham Empire's losses in that war were 92 sky fortresses and 2,300 advanced detachment fighters. The Republic also suffered heavy losses, but they still turned out to be 5 times smaller than the Empire. The Republic of Pruos was doing much better than Hadrian had thought, and judging by everything, that victory was a consequence of orders from above in connection with the upcoming elections. Hadrian believed that this was the end and they would not be able to win that battle. No matter how selfish he may have considered himself, his stupid decision jeopardized the survival of 500 million inhabitants of the Republic. After all, he started the war in the first place by giving the Republic of Prius a false destiny. Therefore, he decided to help the Revolutionary Army. The only remaining rivals were President Fairmont and Louis Fairmont. The presidential palace in which they were located was well guarded by aura masters and archmages. There was a high probability of letting them in if they hid in the underground bunker under the Creator. If everyone unites with Marshal Anson, they will have the opportunity to capture the capital, but it will be very difficult to achieve victory in a fairly short period of time. All they needed to do was ensure new recruiters would arrive once it started. Meanwhile, one of the knights came to his lordship and told him about the events from the front. There are a lot of troops stationed at the presidential palace, so the man asked the commander to send at least a small part to the front, but he refused, explaining that war was for soldiers. At that time, it was proposed to allow high-ranking officials and politicians to take refuge in the presidential palace, because sending troops to protect them could really help in military operations. But the commander also refused such an offer. At that moment, Secretary Koch entered the office. He reported that the young master, Louis, wished to use the main hall of the presidential palace and asked for permission. The guy decided to throw a banquet. He was going to invite the heirs of large companies and give them the opportunity to chat all together. The commander decided to agree and gave permission for this. He agreed because Louis was throwing a difficult party and wanted to make a connection to get funding. Even the guests themselves didn't know if it was right to throw such a party right during the invasion of the Imperial Army. But Louis explained that even if enemies knocked on his door, they would succeed, because he was the master of the fate of Archduke Lucas. During the party, one of the soldiers entered the hall. He reported that a large unit of the advance guard had stormed the presidential palace, bypassing the capital's defenses. The boy rose to his feet and shouted to the presidential squad to protect him. There was no longer any courage or bravery in his eyes. Then the boy decided to run away. Louis went to the underground bunker, but he didn't have time to hide, because the presidential palace guards rebelled against Fairmont's corruption and attacked the boy. He did not want to accept the fact that someone could speak out against him. And the commander of the boy's guard was already cooperating with the Revolutionary Army at that time, but the guy managed to hide with his guards in the elevator. When he got out of the elevator, he saw his father. The guy wondered if he had a plan for dealing with their rivals. He suggested blowing up the presidential palace, but his father refused to take part in it. At that moment, Marquis Adrian Lawrence and Arisha approached them. A few hours earlier, Prius Adrian had met with the commander in the presidential office of the Republic. Meeting President Quattro Ferment was not difficult because the hero had something very interesting for him. Adrian handed the power cores to the president. One of them was the swordsman's power core, created in his personal magic tower, and the other was the equipment of the advance squad. The president asked the guy to make an official statement regarding the accusation of the Revolutionary Army of stealing the idea. Adrian reported that he had prepared more than just a statement. As an apology to the one who was unfairly convicted due to the hero's mistake, he decided to give them 2 gifts. He shared with them information about companies whose stocks would soar to the skies in the near future, and another gift was the location of the headquarters of a group that called itself the Revolutionary Army. Adrian was confident that they would be able to deal with the thieves who stole his technology. The president could not simply ignore such a criminal organization, especially since they received incredible help from Adrian. The hero was delighted with this turn of events because in this way he averted all suspicion from himself. At that moment, a soldier entered the office and announced that they had been attacked. Then Adrian asked to lift the restrictions on teleportation, but the president refused him. He wanted the boy to go there himself, breaking through the Bring Empire's army. By that time, the hero had become a very important acquaintance of Quattro, so he couldn't just abandon him. Then Adrian decided that they would all go together. Once in the bunker, they staged a battle inside the presidential palace, thereby reducing the security force. After that, they took advantage of the chaos that arose to take the president hostage and invited the hero's friends. One of the boy's assistants asked if Marquis Lawrence wanted to become president, but the guy decided it was better to continue ruling on his own territory than to be president for 5 years. The hero believed that Commander Israel should have become president. When Adrian was about to return to his lands, Commander Israel and his army saluted the boy and thanked him for his help. They believed they were greatly indebted to him. With Israel being an example of power, things couldn't get better so quickly. The people who fought for the revolution will have very high expectations for the future and will have conflicts with the supporters of President Fairmont, who saw and heard only what they wanted. But Adrian believed that Israel was a fairly competent man in this. The revolution ended with the arrest of the oligarchs of Fairmont. As the leader of the revolution, Israel took over the helm of the state until the next presidential election. Marshal Anson appointed the commander of the Israel Revolutionary Army as head of the administration to manage state affairs on behalf of the president. And Louis was handed over to the Brigham Empire along with a false fortune in exchange for ending the war. Adrian followed Israel's work and was pleased with it. The problems that had been worrying him were resolved, and now he could focus with peace of mind on selecting a saint and increasing his level in the game. At that moment, a hunter approached the hero and asked about the events that had occurred the day before. He also said that many aristocrats wanted to become friends with the hero, and since he was a level 7 archmage, there was nothing wrong with that. The boys were joined by Marquis Vincent, who was against friendship with Adrian. The second prince himself asked him to approach the boy. He wanted Aricia to demonstrate her abilities. The girl agreed and decided to end it as soon as possible. When the door opened, a huge monster emerged. But with the help of her sword, without even waiting for the attack, the girl killed him. After the fight, while driving in the car, Adrian remembered for a long time the surprised faces of the hunters at how quickly Aricia dealt with her rivals. They looked down on the girl because she was the only female aura expert in the country. But when the boy looked at Aricia, he saw that she was very sad. The girl opened the window and tried to jump out of the car. Adrian managed to restrain Aricia. The guy couldn't understand what was happening because this had never happened to a girl before. When she came to, she was also confused. Adrian immediately asked what happened to her and why she had fainted. The girl realized that the connection to the Hollywood system had momentarily been lost. An error occurred that caused the entire system to crash for 10 seconds. Everything was fine behind her body, and she just blacked out for a second due to shock. Due to its high stability, everything was connected to the system, including educational institutions as well as the financial and military sectors. So Adrian couldn't just turn a blind eye to it. He ordered to return to the castle as soon as possible. Although he didn't know exactly what the privileges of the Hollywood system administrator were, he assumed they were one of the rewards in the Destiny quest line. Although not immediately, the system could become his, so he decided to figure it out. At that moment, Aricia silently placed her hand on the boy's. Looking at her, the boy thought that he didn't know what kind of mistake this was, but he was very afraid that it would happen again. Arriving at the castle, the hero immediately went to play. Together with the girl, he went to Manuel Lucas's magic tower on the 8th floor to meet Chester. Sharivni reported that if we assume that Hollywood was similar to Earth, then there should be a communication network there, along with hardware and software for ease of use. The main difference from the ground was that signals were transmitted through mana, which was in the atmosphere. However, ultimately, to turn that law into reality, a central control system was needed, and something went wrong with it. Chester pondered whether to disclose information about this incident. That day, at around 4:30 p.m. local time, a thief broke into the facility where the Hollywood System control terminal was hidden. These were Asanas dressed in black and advanced unit fighters with power equipment. An automatic security system was activated to prevent thieves from reaching the main terminal. But even if all the control terminals of the Hollywood system were captured by the enemy, it would not have happened because the Lord of the Tower of Destiny was Adrian. Who exactly was the thief, Chester did not know. No terminals, no artifacts, no voice recordings were found at the site. There was no information that could help identify the unknowns. Adrian asked the wizard if something like this happened again in the future to first disconnect Aricia from the system. Although the boy did not know who his enemies were, the motives for attacking the Hollywood system were clear. Therefore, the hero decided to increase the time for the game, even if it would result in absence. He has 14 levels left until the next stage, and if the hero tries, he can achieve this in 4 months. It's been a month since the Republic Prius incident. The war between the two great nations ended and a period of stability began, so the paused selection of saints resumed. Miss Everill left to continue the competition, but Adrian had no right to interfere with them. Therefore, he continued to increase his level in the game. Meanwhile, Prince Luke intended to remove the first prince from claiming his right to the throne. As soon as the king announced his decision to abdicate, the struggle for power in the kingdom of Reinhardt reached a critical point. If the king abdicates, the first prince will receive the crown. Prince Luke, being second, should have taken action before it was too late. The hero believed that a civil war could begin. While sitting at the meeting, he saw representatives from the Triton faction, which the hunters were trying to invite him to. They were completely unlike the others. The hero was interested in what the first prince was up to, since he was losing by 20%. Luke intended to end the civil conflict because the Crossen Empire could launch an invasion at any moment. Therefore, he decided to personally take on this operation to infiltrate the royal castle. Marquis Vincent was to go with him. Therefore, the prince left the Marquis of Hamilton as commander-in-chief, and he announced Marquis Laurent as deputy commander. The Marquis of Triton was very greedy for power. Therefore, fearing for his faction's reputation, he aggressively resented the hero's punishment at the last meeting, and then he tried to recruit him to his faction while hunting. Moreover, he did not get along with Marquis Vincent, the second prince's right-hand man. The operation was supposed to begin in 2 days. Everyone was ordered to organize their forces throughout the territory and be in a state of full readiness. After the gathering, Luke asked Lawrence to leave Arisha to him. After all, she was a master of aura and was considered a valuable talent for the partisan detachment. Arisha didn't object. Therefore, Adrian agreed to the prince's proposal. Luke believed that in this way, the Marquis Lawrence and Countess Klein would make a wonderful contribution to the success of the operation. And when they win the war, he will personally reward Adrian for his dedicated work. Adrian warned the girl that if the second prince tried to harm her in any way, she should not allow him to do so. Arriving home, one of the knights announced that they had guests. The hero's father and mother arrived. Adrian asked what the reason for their arrival was. Father heard that the civil war was about to break out soon. The hero did not expect that the man would find out about this, because he had cut off all ties with the outside world. Then Adrian said that His Majesty planned to abdicate the throne and Luke was not going to sit idly by. And most likely orders with instructions will be distributed to the baronies and viscounties just before the start of the operation. After listening to everything, the father asked the boy not to go against them under any circumstances. After all, His Majesty was much more terrifying than everyone thought. In no way could he be considered only the nominal head of the household. But Adrian couldn't understand what this had to do with him. Then my father told me about the Grandmaster. This was the equivalent of an 8th circle mage, and as far as he knew, among the 5 Grandmasters of the continent, none belonged to their kingdom. Previously, their family had served the king in the court affairs department for a long time. But one day, due to the death of their grandfather, access to the palace for their family was cut off. And the father had no choice but to enter into a risky marriage that would entail a decline in the status of the name. This happened because grandfather knew about the secrets of the royal family. At the end of the conversation, the father announced that Sylvia was pregnant and the hero would soon become an older brother. After talking with his father, Adrian went to meet Michel. He told him that his father would not participate in the war because his wife was pregnant. The prince asked the boy in which area the second prince's faction would show the greatest weakness. Adrian believed it was information control, so they decided to create a decoy and allow the invasion to take place. What will it mean to surrender the crown palaces of the prince and king that Prince Luke so coveted? And as soon as he begins to enjoy the joy of victory, they will begin their operation. But Adrian believed that Luke could have led his faction into the castle and locked it up there. And this will be the worst move in this position for the second prince. After all, this would mean betrayal from within. The second prince will be happy, telling the story that the crown prince fled without having a clue about what really happened. But there were several problems with this plan. Therefore, the prince decided to show the boy several mysterious passages in the castle. Adrian also decided to offer something to the prince. Since he played a significant role in the recent crisis in the Prius Republic and made a significant contribution to the revolution, he was given certain promises as a result. They agreed to provide military support to their kingdom in the event of civil war. The guy didn't mean a major invasion under the guise of the clouds of the Sky Fortress. They were supposed to provide 3 auras. At this point, all the behind-the-scenes work to win over the second prince was completed. Shaking hands, they happily expressed their enthusiasm for their collaboration. But then Adrian wondered what would happen if Prince Luke's attempt to capture His Majesty failed and he himself became a prisoner. Michel thought it would be practically impossible, but it would make their lives much easier. Adrian assumed that even the crown prince was in complete obscurity. The same day has come. The Eagle patrolled the area near the royal palace and Arisha went to the second prince. Before leaving, Adrian gave the girl a holy sword. He also warned that the Grand Master could be hiding in the royal palace and that if she encountered him, she must surrender no matter how it affected the operation. The guy wanted her to prioritize her personal safety. Luke was holding a meeting of his army. He believed that he would be able to take the head off the shoulders of the incompetent first prince that day, and thus will become a new star that will illuminate their kingdom. When his army entered the palace, they saw that the prince's crowns were nowhere to be found. They assumed he suspected something and ran away. Since the prince was not there, Luke suggested moving on to the next objective, taking his father under his protection. Entering his office, Luke told his father to entrust his fate to him for a while. The king did not understand what was happening and why someone dared to invade the palace. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the capital, coalition forces were gathering in a sky fortress. They received a report that the prince had entered into negotiations with His Majesty the King. Adrian ordered his army to advance towards the capital, and as soon as the information that they had captured His Majesty was revealed, the first prince would send his forces to help. Everything went according to the guy's plan. The commander reported that he needed the abilities of Adrian and Aricia. The guy agreed because he expected it to be part of his plan. He turned to Margrave Raven and said that it was time for him to let go of his hostility a little. And since they were all in the same boat, they had to fight to the last. And they had to leave the past in the past because no one wanted to get stabbed in the back by a friend. Meanwhile, Luke, taking the king hostage, said he wanted him to quietly and calmly hand over the throne to him. Suddenly, Adrian's soldier reported that communication with the partisan detachment had been lost. At this time, 4 members of the Special Forces unit lost their heads in an instant. His Majesty's knight appeared before them. Luke was shocked because he knew nothing about him. He ordered his army to capture the unknown, but they failed. 2 swords sliced through the air, manifesting themselves as blue blades of aura. At that moment, the Grandmaster was in front of them. He easily blocked the attack of the Windows, and Vincent, the best swordsman of the Reinhardt kingdom. The man asked the king for permission to carry out the execution immediately, but His Majesty believed that this was an important part of the nation's military forces, and their forces will collapse if they remain in the central administration. The king ordered the knight to deal with Luke. Meanwhile, the Celestial Fortress was trying to figure out what had happened to the connection. Adrian wanted to find some way out because he understood that a Grandmaster could appear there. With the help of the Eagle, the hero saw what was really happening there. Then Adrian asked the Proto to give him a chance to infiltrate the royal palace again. Since he was a battle mage, his abilities in battle were not inferior even to the aura masters of the advanced detachment. Also, the guy was an archmage, and if something were to happen to His Majesty, there would be no better backup than him. The commander decided to provide the boy with the best knights from the elite, and the ban on teleportation was also lifted. After that, Adrian went to help. Meanwhile, the Grandmaster thought that Alicia would be the easiest to deal with, but she was so strong and defended herself so well, as if her feet had grown deep into the ground. Luke wanted to set fire to the royal palace as soon as he could hide from the Grandmaster. At this moment, Adrian came to the rescue. Through the Eagle and with the help of Aricia, they managed to kill Luke. Then the Randmeister realized that they were pretending to be on the prince's side, but in reality they were waiting for the right time to kill him. At that moment, Adrian Lawrence's voice rang out. He decided to appeal to the king. The guy wanted them to make a decision on the situation before war broke out. The Black Knight was the late Marquis Gabriel. Everyone said he died from an excess of mana. Adrian reported that 72 aristocrats who were leaders were under arrest, and if the decision is delayed, the chaos could only increase. The guy offered to give them the opportunity to surrender. The king agreed. Because of a young man who was barely 20 years old, the coup d'etat led by the second prince failed. The battle for the throne ended in an overwhelming victory for the first prince. The second prince turned out to be quite easy because the first prince was the one who secretly allowed the faction to grow. The heads of families who supported the second prince were executed, and their families were relieved of responsibility. Marquess Adrian Lawrence was awarded a dukedom. He was also granted the former territories of the late Marquis of Hemington as an extension of his existing holdings. The king hoped that the hero would become a just ruler who would care for his people. Meanwhile, various data leaks, both large and small, have been popping up in the Hollywood system, so Chester decided to check them out. The magician found out that during the last system crash, an artificial intelligence accidentally started up. After catching him, Chester suggested that if he were put into a doll, he could be used like a boy running errands in the real world. Adrian thought Vlad was a very good thing. After all, even his most sworn enemies worshipped him. He was thinking about how to get revenge on Isabella, so he decided to present the girl to Chester. Since he wanted some kind of animal that could be turned into a doll, Chester didn't expect the hero to pick a girl for this. Isabella asked Adrian to let her go, but the boy wanted to take revenge on everyone who had ever offended him. He wanted to make her regret being born. No. While Adrian was busy, Everil successfully completed the final competition with outstanding results. Adrian brought with him a girl named Bug, who used to be Isabella. She looked like Isabella, but that was all that was left of her, because she was created by artificial intelligence. She took control of wiping Isabella's brain to zero and put on her shell. Meanwhile, it was announced that 14 candidates in the world and 11 candidates in the festival were to advance. Everyone was in full anticipation. Suddenly, everyone saw that Evelyn Francis, who had just begun her ascent of the stairs, was already descending. She decided to cede the title of saint. The Duchy of Francis refused to take a position. Although Evelyn was expected to follow the path of the goddess, the likelihood of her victory was very small, so they decided to leave with honor. Now the girl was remembered not as a candidate who refused to become a goddess, but as a staff member who generously gave up the competition for the sake of others. Adrian was sincerely surprised by Evelyn's refusal, but as a result, everyone he thought of walked the path of the saint. Judy Esther, Princess Sia Lin, Grace Halwyn, and Avril Barnett remained. Those who were given permission to enter the path were ordered to pray to the goddess Sepia. At that moment, the Advent took place. Even the holidays with the saint didn't expect this. She chose a boy named Jihad and a girl named Avril. Endless chaos engulfed the world. It was necessary to beware of the fall of the Black Star. Returning to Adrian, Avery thanked him for everything. He offered his help to the girl if she ever needed it. Sylvester to learn all the obligations before accepting the title of saint. The Holy Land and the great nations investigated the divine prophecy, but they never found out anything about the Black Star. Meanwhile, Adrian went back into the game to level up. He discussed with Chester that he couldn't even get enough sleep because of his level increase. But since he believed he was not a genius like Archduke Lucas, he had to sacrifice comfortable sleep. Chester revealed that Lucas was born into special circumstances where he had no choice but to possess magic. Lucas has been a wizard since childhood. Adrian couldn't believe it because he knew that he was from Earth, so he couldn't have been a wizard since childhood. Chester said that mages existed on Earth but were weaker and less powerful. Duke Lucas was the eldest son of a declining wizarding family. Even as a magician, he could barely manage to conjure a small fire at his fingertips, which was definitely less effective than a lighter. During his research, an accident occurred, and that's how the man ended up there. But unlike the hero who recovered from death, Lucas was transported to that world by powerful blasts of magic. Adrian had come there through fire and water with only his own fists, and the mage had started with powers at the level of an archmage, so it made no sense to simply compare their positions. Unlike Chester, who once experienced an untimely end, the magician was almost accidentally transported to another world. Adrian's path meant even more than the one taken by Archduke Lucas. The boy asked Chester what the goddess Sepia's last words meant. As it turned out, they were being dismantled by the people of the sacred land. He couldn't say for sure, but he had some understanding. Therefore, I thought it would be better if the hero figured it out himself. He gave the boy the materials he had at his disposal to resolve the situation. A book called The Reasons Why the People of Rondell Didn't Go into Outer Space, despite their level of technological development. Up until that point, the hero was just trying to survive, so he didn't have time to really think about space or anything else. Physical strength there appeared under the guise of physical abilities, and Rondell, unlike Earth, had special conditions that made it much easier to go into space. The guy decided to investigate this situation, and as a result discovered that all roads led to the goddess Sepia. He realized that the physical laws of that world were radically different from the universe in which Earth was located, that the Milky Way, that the other stars that could be detected in Rondell's sky were just an illusion. The ultimate Rondell turned out to be a giant cage with its own limitations, from where demons constantly invaded. The guy believed that for the world to be full of magic, it was impossible to approach it with traditional ideas. In past research, he had observed the world outside only visually, and now he decided to try to approach it through the lens of magic. He equipped his ship with a man-made detection device like the Rondell version of the Hubble telescope, and his assumptions were correct. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the saint with his holy knights burst into his dwelling and arrested the hero because he had gone against the goddess's prohibition and committed blasphemy. The emperor of the Brigham Empire pulled the hero out of that mess by donating a large sum of money to beg for forgiveness. But the hero did not stop and created a new device that was able to observe the true essence of the universe. Therefore, I found out that the night sky of the Earth and Rondell were very similar. Adrian watched the night sky for a long time and all the while felt some discomfort. The constellation of the sky of the Rondell was a reflection of the constellation of the Earth from left to right. That world was connected to the hero's family, and there was a possibility that it was the other side of the Earth. Thus, Adrian understood what Chester was talking about. He suggested that the Black Star was a planet on the other side of that world. If everything turns out to be true, then the goddess's prophecy could mean that there was a growing problem between the worlds. This was a global threat. Since Adrian couldn't tell anyone about this, he didn't know what to do next. He thought if the prophecy was only about demons, it would be much easier. The hero was back in the game and trying to increase his level, but he was mentally pondering the situation he had found out. He managed to reach level 250. Thus, the boy was transported to a secret location that was created by God Ariel. This was the first raid in 6 months. The named monster Valak Tarns was summoned to battle, and all that remains for the hero is to continue his path, because it has already been determined for him. Therefore, he entered the battle with confidence. Tarns was a very powerful monster. He was a raid boss whose security level was significantly higher than that of the Death Knight the hero encountered after reaching level 200, but the hero had absolutely no doubt about their victory. Therefore, the boys managed to successfully conquer the monster named Valak Tarnus. Chester praised the boy and said he did an excellent job. However, he warned that next time it would not be so easy to win the battle. Moreover, at that stage, Arisha's growth stopped. But in the final battle, Adriano realized that their honed teamwork had led to an incredibly effective synergy. He believed that the day would never come when he would consider Aricia to be useless. Her potential for development was undeniable, so she continued to grow. Ryan was granted 5 uses of the Hollywood system's administrative rights, and the 8th Circle was formed. The events have moved to the capital of the Kingdom of Reinhardt, Lionel. Adrian met with Mark, head of the Planning and Coordination Department of the Ministry of Justice. The man wanted to invite Adrian to dinner. The reason the hero came there was to appoint Gregory to an official position. Arriving at the king, the boy reported that Comet Reinhardt desired an audience. But the boy wanted to tell about the birth of a new aura master in their kingdom. At the same moment, Princess Cialine of the Roberto Kingdom arrived at the kingdom's emergency teleportation gate. Adrian was surprised by what he heard, because they reported that the girl was in a rather injured state. They came running to help. The princess was lying on the ground and barely breathing. Adrian ran closer and asked everyone to move away and began to restore life. He didn't understand who could have done such a cruel thing to a girl. Since she had less than half of her internal organs left, simple healing magic was not enough. Taking the girl in his arms, Adrian announced that he was taking her with him. After all, she didn't need healing magic, but the magic of the 8th Circle of Resurrection. After some time, the girl came to her senses and saw Adrian next to her. He informed her that she was in the central city of Marincove. The Kingdom of Roberto were the rulers of the east of the Triton Rondel continent. After the fall of President Fairmont's regime in the United Republic, the revolution caused cracks in the barrier protecting the royal family. It was this that led to the usurpation of the emperor's throne. In Roberto's kingdom, the word of the nobility has always carried more weight than the royal family. The hero suggested that the desperate attempts to win the saints' competitions were also used to restore the influence of the royal family. Adrian told the girl that he would help reclaim their kingdom. But the princess didn't want to cause him trouble for nothing. Then the hero asked to give him a small island in the stormy sea for free use for 50 years. And he, in turn, would stop the uprising and prevent large-scale military actions from being triggered. His goal was the tourmaline in the bowels of that island because everyone said that it had the largest deposits in the world. The girl was not sure that the hero would be able to stop that incident without causing a major war, but Adrian said that for him it would also be less energy-intensive. Therefore, the princess agreed to the boy's proposal. Adrian promised to do his best not to disappoint her. He decided to bring everything to a struggle between people, not heavenly fortresses, and first of all to push the Prius Republic into action. The leader of the revolutionary army was Emperor Dalian. Adrian suggested scaring the old man first. He and the princess set off to meet Israel. At that moment, Van Duyn entered the office. He was a great feudal lord and minister of war of the Kingdom of Robert. When the man saw the princess there, he expressed his disappointment that she was trying to use foreign forces to win the fight. He had arrived to ask for support for their new royal authority in the Kingdom of Roberto. His Majesty Emperor Dalian sent the boy a letter. It said that the man wanted to hand over 500 trillion loot so that he wouldn't interfere in the fight. These figures were practically equal to the national budget. But Adrian believed that money didn't decide everything in that world. Israel requested that the money be immediately transferred to Princess Cialine's account. And if they do, their republic will not interfere in the affairs of Roberto's kingdom. Adrian thought it was the perfect way to make fun of his husband. The feudal lord did not like this, and he angrily walked away. Since Israel decided to live for the sake of its people, it could not allow itself to be encroached upon by the nobility of another nation. After that, Adrian, Arisha, and the princess went to the Ven residence. The princess did not understand what was the hero's plan. Adrian decided to clarify the situation and find out something. The guy wanted to test the trust that had formed within the group, and he also had a perfect talent for creating conflict. The hero called for help from Sir Augustus, who possessed mental techniques. Meanwhile, Adrian learned about Michael Gale. It was a wizard from Riser Island. He had a 6th circle and also possessed an innate talent for designing and making artifacts. Adrian learned that 2 years after he entered the service of the Emperor, They had already launched an independent production of equipment for the advanced units. The man seemed very suspicious to the boy. The princess asked Lawrence to execute the emperor herself. She wanted him for everything he had done to her. The operation plan was as simple as possible. They decided to cause chaos and then take advantage of it by hitting the top. Depending on how the situation develops, the princess may need to act on her own. Hadrian and Aricia stormed the emperor right into his domain. Immediately, the emperor's guards surrounded the boy, but with the help of a fiery explosion, the hero was able to eliminate them. The battle was over at the exact moment they entered the palace. When the princess also appeared, she warned that she would come to take revenge on the emperor. He made sure that no one escaped because every aristocrat was an enemy there. The emperor urged his army to attack, but no one listened to him. The hero warned that in order to survive, they needed to lay down their weapons. And also, turning to the emperor, he said that if the princess had not come running to him covered in blood, he could have held on to the throne. In the crowd of people, Adrian saw the wizard Riser. He tried to attack the hero. Adrian thought he was an extra, but he turned out to be a puppeteer. This sometimes happened in games. The guy didn't think a dark magician could appear so suddenly. Hadrian believed that he would have had to give up the title of Archmage if he had not experienced dark magic. The black magician met many people on his way, but for the first time they were able to feel his energy. Hadrian decided to put an end to him immediately and invited Aricia to do so. With the help of her strength and the powerful sword, the girl managed to cut off the magician's hand. But he wasn't going to give up, so he called his assistants to help. Adrian understood that they were stronger and faster than the ordinary warriors of the advanced detachment, but they practically did not move regularly, which was unique for humans. Neither Adrian nor the Black Mage was going to give up. But the guy was much smarter and was able to set the shield in the opposite direction. Thus, the attack was directed towards the opponent. Meanwhile, the princess wanted to deal with the emperor. She didn't want to kill him, but prepared something worse than death for him. The princess was very grateful to the boy for his help. She understood that if it weren't for Adrian, she could have forgotten about the throne. The hero decided to return to the kingdom of Reinhard to explore the island of Ophelia. While the world was in a panic trying to figure out which faction the Dark Mage was from, Adrian was also full of secrets. Therefore, the princess decided to preserve all the kindness that Marquis Lawrence had shown her as pleasant memories. Lately, Adriano has been diligently collecting tourmaline mines. He did this because he discovered in his notes a suggestion that tourmaline could partially replace diamond as a material for the core of a power movement. The cost of a single diamond accounted for half the cost of producing advanced equipment. So Adrian wanted to find the ratio of diamond to tourmaline. Conducting experiments, the guy spent large sums of money on it. By the time he got everything right, Adrian had burned through about 2 trillion. But they managed to find the true ratio in which the diamond was 210 carats and the tourmaline was 852 carats. Thus, they successfully managed to reduce the cost of producing a power engine to 20% of the original cost. The king wanted the boy to raise the price of a fencer who had recently been put up for sale. After all, I believed that at such a pace they were monopolizing the domestic market for equipment for advanced units. However, Adrian believed that the Royal Magic Tower's development department sensed an approaching crisis and believed that he was fanning the flames of competition. Adrian agreed with the king and decided to raise the price by 10%. After talking with Adrian, the king decided to talk to his son Michael. He didn't like Adrian's way of acting, so he considered the guy to be a very cunning guy. The king was sure that people were very cunning, and that once they came to power, they would definitely want more. Michel did not support his father's position and considered Adrian very intelligent and incapable of meanness. And there were also many directions for the hero in which he could indulge his thirst for power and desire to show strength, despite the royal family. Michael intended to turn the kingdom into an empire, so he asked the king not to put pressure on Adrian. As Adrian and Aricia were walking down the hallway, they saw Bug sitting on a chair and holding something in her hands. When the girl saw them, she hid something behind her back, but Aricia took it away. It was a smartphone that the girl found at the market. She was going to give it to the hero, but she wanted to play a little. Adrian wondered where exactly the girl found the phone. Events moved to Marquis Otis. Michel was informed that Adrian Lawrence had arrived. The hero apologized for arriving unannounced. The reason for his arrival was that he had heard that a rather interesting person had recently appeared near the girl. It was a guy named Benjamin Theo. Adrian had a few questions for him. Taking his smartphone out of his pocket, the hero asked if he was a familiar boy. The subject reported that he had sold the thing to a street vendor when he was in dire need of money, before Michel had taken him under her wing. After that, Adrian stopped time and Michel seemed to freeze. He wanted to convey something important to the guy without any extra ears. Adrian asked what country the boy was from. Theo said he was from Singapore. He also added that his ship had crashed, and the guy himself had fallen overboard into the sea, and when he came to, he was already in the other world. After talking to the guy, Adrian realized that he understood absolutely nothing about magic and skills. Adrian wanted Theo to tell him about what happened on Earth after 2020. Theo said that he had an accident and moved to Rondell in 2020 and lived there for 21 years, but only 2 years passed on Earth. He also added that 2020 turned out to be a special year for the Earth. He also added that an apocalypse would occur and natural disasters would engulf the entire world. Such cataclysms will torment the world for 10 days and the international community will be paralyzed and many people will die. And once the situation finally calms down, unusual phenomena will begin to appear that will plunge the world into chaos. At first, it will spread very quickly, capable of leading a person to death. And there will also be deadly toxic zones that will be filled with some scary mutants. In some places, toxic gases will begin to accumulate, which will severely limit a person's freedom of movement. And after everything, new natural formations will suddenly begin to appear all over the Earth. In one moment, where there was nothing, islands will rise from the bottom of the sea or mountains will suddenly grow in the middle of an empty field. Adrian thanked the guy for the conversation, and thanks to him, he received very important information that he will need to think carefully about. The hero suggested ending this conversation and offered for Theo to go with him. If he could, he would gladly return the boy to Earth, but moving between dimensions was impossible at the moment. But Adrian had at least some idea of how to get back. In return, Theo was forbidden from sharing Adrian's secret and any knowledge of the land. Theo wondered if Rondell's magic could solve the problem of toxic zones on Earth. When Adrian started the clock again, he warned Michelle that he wanted to take Benjamin with him. Adrian suggested that Michelle also spend some time in the Duchy of Lawrence. Since the girl came closest to Lucas's fate of all, Adrian wanted to have complete control over her. Since nothing unexpected had happened, it was worth keeping such an unconditional genius with him. Mikkel reported that the Pyram window fell 2 hours ago. The aggressor was Count Triss, Mark Count of the Kreutzen Empire, who launched a sudden attack on the detachment, which included 200 soldiers of the advanced detachment, with the aim of capturing the ruler's castle. The prince ordered Adrian to take control of the possessions of Margrave Triss. The hero realized that the prince's attitude was very different from previous kings, but he did not expect such a reaction. Adrian promised to make Mark Count Triss pay for his crimes. Michelle also introduced everyone to another person who would be participating in the task. This was Marquis Gabriel James, the 6th Grandmaster of Rondell. Michelle announced that he had removed all restrictions on the number of advanced detachments and sky fortresses that vassals were allowed to possess. Adrian and Arisio went to the Margrave of the Kreutzen Empire, Count Triss. Thus, overnight, not a stone remained of Count Triss's possessions. The Kingdom of Reinhard appointed a Grand Master, who was now the commander on the eastern border. But this did not please the Crown Prince of the Kreutzen Empire, Andre, and he intended to destroy Adrian Lawrence and the First Prince before he became the official king. 7 diplomats were killed in a brutal attack on the embassy of the Kingdom of Reinhard. The Kreutzen Empire concentrated its military forces on the border with the Kingdom of Reinhard. Relations between the two countries were rapidly straining. The more time passed, the more tense the atmosphere became. At the meeting, Adrian told Michelle that he and Arisio were planning a wedding, because they had a reason for it. Adrian couldn't tell anyone about reaching the 8th circle through Archduke Lucas, so he lied that Arisio would soon receive the title of Duchess, and that's why he decided to marry her. Michelle promised the hero that he would conduct the wedding ceremony himself, because by that time he would already be on the throne. The events moved to the day of the Crown Prince's coronation. Andre was already preparing a plan to get rid of the prince that very day. He ordered his army to get rid of Michael and Adrian. But the assassination attempt failed and the detachment was destroyed by Duke Lawrence. Andre knew for sure that in the coming war he was obliged to kill Duke Lawrence. This was his first goal. But Adrian came to him first because he was not going to die. After completing the task, Adrian Lawrence was contentedly drinking tea by the window, enjoying his victory.